I apologize for being 7 minutes late, but that's kind of what I normally do all the time, so I don't surprise anybody by being on time. It is May 1st, 2018, Tuesday. It is 9:07. Patty, would you please call roll?
Vice Chair Gagos.
Present.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Present.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Present. All right. Next is a pledge of allegiance. You all stand. Mr. Javier, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will we go ahead and get a motion to approve the agenda as is? Please, stay standing if we can.
Motion to approve.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos.
Yes. At this time, it's inspirational devotion, which I'll ask Commissioner O'Donnell to announce who will be doing that today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and audience. Today we have Lucy McCall, who is going to give a Celtic prayer on May 1st. Come to the podium, please.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Beltane. This is the day that the Celts traditionally have celebrated the fertility of the land, the people, the animals, and life. And so they would dance around the maypole, and hopefully there's people doing that in this town right now. So I would like to just offer this prayer to you all as people who are taking care of this town and all the things that we love here. And the way we do it is through the directions first, which represent the elements of life, and we start with the East. So thank you very much to the East, which is the power of the mind and clarity, the sword of truth. We honor you and are grateful to you every day, the air, the wind, the things that make things change. So thank you, East, for being with us. We honor the South and are grateful to the South, the power of fire, which we hope you will respect us too this year and give us a gentle fire season. And we respect you even to the point where we have to make laws around you being burned too much. So we honor you and thank you. And in our tradition, it is the power of the Spirit and will. And in this will, we come together with the higher will and follow the highest will of the Creator. And thank you. And we honor the power of the West, which is the power of water, which we are so grateful for when you come from the skies and bless our lands and ourselves, our Sekias. And we are so grateful to you, and we are hoping for more this year. Thank you very much. Good West, Holy Grail, power of water, the heart. And to the north, the power of sustenance and life, and our hands, our feet, our head. We thank you very, very much for the sustenance you give us and how you give us life every day and give us something to eat and give power to the fields and make everything grow so beautifully. Thank you, great power of earth. And thank you, great Father, power of the sky, the stars, the sun, and the rain coming down. Thank you very much for how much you help us every day and give us great blessing. And thank you, great Mother of the earth. Thank you for the sustenance you give us every day, and bless us. And may, as much as you give us, we give back to you, and that you are replenished with all that we take. Thank you very much, great Mother. And to the ancestors and the wise ones that come before, the many, many wise ones, all the prophets, the saints, the people of great knowledge, thank you very much for blessing us every day with your wisdom and speaking in our ears and giving us knowledge about how we are to conduct ourselves in this plane of life. So thank you very much. And here's just a blessing for Taos and the commissioners. And thank you so much for how much you rule this town and help our town be more successful and in balance and joining in love and acceptance of each other and help the people who do not behave well to do better and to grow and become better people. And thank you for all the work you do, commissioners, and thank you for all the people of this town who do so much. And thank you for this land and the water, and thank you, land and water, and all that comes from the sky and the earth. So thank you, which means good health to you all.
Thank you. Please can be seated. It's time we move to item 6, this is citizens' concerns. Citizens wishing to speak shall be limited to the comments of up to 5 minutes. No action will be taken. I'd ask that the commission will only listen to these concerns and we can address those with staff to take action in later meetings. So if you wish to come to the podium and state your name, we'll go ahead and start with citizens' concerns.
Good morning. Thank you very much to give me this opportunity. I'm here because I had noticed on the agenda that there was going to be some discussion about the continuation of the juvenile detention center. And I've been doing some volunteer, working in the jail a little bit with the juveniles that are there, as well as with the adult detention. And I'm beginning to see a really great link between those two, because so often we see children who are in the juvenile detention who have parents or relatives in the adult detention. And so our focus through Las Cumbres, who's been allowing us to go into the jail, initially providing parenting classes in the juvenile detention. And what we'd like to do is encourage you to continue to look at what's happening in the juvenile detention right now. And because I really see a lot of innovation, a lot of creative thinking about how can we support these kids. And right now we're doing a nurturing center at the Enos Garcia, and we're seeing, I would guess, probably 30, 40 children at least at Enos Garcia alone who have children who are either currently incarcerated or have parents who are actually off in prison. So, or in and out of the detention center. So the numbers are tremendous, and what we're trying to do is prevent them from ending up in the juvenile detention and ending up then again, of course, into the adult detention. So we're trying to look at how we break that cycle. And so we really would love to see a continuation of the juvenile detention because it gives us access to those children. And I feel like there's been a lot of innovation from the part of the Lieutenant Montoya and his staff. I have the utmost respect for that staff over there. And then I'd also like to just mention that right now we don't have the juvenile drug court, we don't have the juvenile detention center. So the loss of the detention center for the kids would be another loss, I think, for our community. And so I want to just kind of voice my concern and want to make sure, because I was so excited about the prospect of having an actual residential treatment, because we could actually see more impact on those children. And I know that there's been some disappointment in that process, and it looks like that might not happen, but I hate to lose what we do have for our kids and having to send them away and being able to make connection to those family members. And there's an interesting study that just came out too that I just want to reference to. Was done by the pro bono economists out of London, and they were talking about the economic benefits of providing counseling early on. And I think that's one of the things I see has the capacity to happen at the juvenile detention is linking and connecting children and their families to early counseling. And I think that's something we have to look at. And so I just want us to look at what are the real long-term effects of having no facility here for the children. So anyway, I'm just here to encourage that that continuation of the juvenile detention. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks so much for the opportunity. My name is Rachel Cox. I'm the Clinical Director at Community Against Violence. Along the lines of what Sienna was mentioning, when we noticed that there was discussion, consideration, and decision, we thought, man, we have not done a good enough job keeping in touch with our commissioners. Realizing that we've really been remiss, kind of I think for a while probably with our head down, kind of in our wheelhouse, focusing on the crises, focusing on trying to stabilize families in our communities, and not really doing a good enough job making sure that you all know what's going on in the community. because we've been hearing about the RTC or the potential kind of cost effectiveness maybe of the juvenile detention center probably for a couple of years now, I think. And I think we had just gotten in this pattern of kind of not being aware of what we should be grateful for existing in our community. So all of a sudden we're like, wait! And we had real concern when we noticed the decision part of it. And so I guess apologies where they're due if we really haven't made it, been in closer contact with you all. Because like Sienna said, we're really, I think over the last 4 or 5 years, there's just been such a slash in mental health services in our community and in our state. We know that there's been such cuts to substance abuse services. And so often we see kind of the day before youth end up in the juvenile detention center, our whole system of response is really conceptualizing them as someone who's experienced a lot of trauma. And then that behavior frequently, when they become teenagers, ends up being criminalized and these kinds of things. So when we were thinking that there was the possibility of it becoming an RTC, that was really exciting because we know that a lot of these youth, especially to avoid longer stays in adult detention or prison, really need that early intervention. One thing I really want to kind of really emphasize is that we have the benefit in our community with Lieutenant Montoya. He's kind of been almost like a de facto red line, like a residential treatment center. The services that the kids get there and the ways that, and the spirit that things are done within that facility are exceptional. Our Sexual Assault Coalition, the statewide Sexual Assault Coalition, acknowledged the work that he had done in terms of trauma-informed care. It's really like no other place. And I think, when I think about the rupture in the relationship either with their community, their sense of place in their families, I think we just need to be asking ourselves the question of, do we value our children in this community? And if we do, which I know we all do, and we still have to make funding decisions around that, I'm just hopeful that closing the detention center would be a real feeling like, okay, this is really our last ditch effort. We've tried everything else, and now as a community we can say, now it's time. And so sometimes when CAV is involved with maintaining programming that's not paying for itself cost effectively, just even trying to pump the brakes as much as possible to kind of try to see who else can we pull in together. We have community members that are extremely committed to trying to come up with solutions and support the county however we can. So I appreciate you being open to it. I know it's all in your hearts, obviously, to care deeply for this community. And so we, again, want to stay in really close contact with you throughout that process. And again, we understand it's on the agenda item for today, but we really appreciate you hearing what we have to say today, so thank you.
Hi, I'm Melinda Williams, the Community Against Violence also. To preface this, please forgive me if we're going down a road that's not meant to go down. It's just when community members see an item on the agenda, it's kind of nebulous in our interpretation. I just wanted to take the time to let you know is that we're committed, and if this is something you're looking at, we'd be happy to serve on a work group to look at how we can make it an effective facility here if there's any question about that. And that my personal commitment is to make sure that we don't have further fragmentations of families that have ended up with these kids being where they are in our detention facilities, whether it's here in Taos or sending them further afield. When we see families that have these children much younger, which we did historically, it's our 40th year, I remember starting and seeing kids being drugged in with their parents, either a protective parent or the not a protective parent, and realizing at some point, like 10 years later, that these are the kids that ended up in our detention facilities, and then another 5 years later, they end up in adult detention facilities or in our hospitals or in our emergency battered families services. And we don't have a lot of capture points for these children. So when they're no longer young, really young little kids, we end up having them as the teens that are really out in the streets, and then we end up having them in a detention center. And if we can't capture them there and really give them good services, and we send them further afield where their families are further fractured, we're not going to be able to capture them as adults quite so easily. And what we see is that when they're adults and we're going into the detention centers as adults, it's a little bit harder to try and make their lives healthy and happy and safe for them and their families. So whatever you can do when you're looking at, I said cost effective when she was reaching for a word, is we had children's counseling services that were not being paid for when we needed to start them, and we knew we needed to start them. And it took years to recover those costs. And you all know, you do radiothon with us, we beg you to come, you be on air and inspire the community to give, is that sometimes we pay for programs that don't pay for themselves because we know it's the right thing to do for our community, because we see the studies and we see the intergenerational patterns. And I encourage you all to look at those patterns past just what it costs to run the program. We do that with the offenders program also, which I know you all have seen our proposals for, is that for years, the Children's Advocacy Center that works with child abuse victims and the offenders program that works with the domestic violence offenders did not pay for themselves because we didn't have the grants for it. We had to develop the community and government understanding of why it was important to invest in those programs before the grant money was available to apply for. So I'm going to encourage you to think the long-term game of how to make sure these kids don't end up in the dumpster. And we're willing to be part of that team. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that since this is an agenda item 9, that the rest of the people who are here wait until they hear the discussion and then make their comments.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner, but as part of our agenda, the citizens have the opportunity to speak at this time. And then when we get into item 15,
9.
Item 9, that'll be just for conversation between us and our manager. I wouldn't want to have that participation with the public. I think it's important that the public have the time to speak now. If not, we'll be sitting here for hours on end going over the conversations. I'd rather have this be the time that the public can participate, because I think the discussion and decision will be made by those that are going to be involved with Mr. Nelson and Mr. Cordova ourselves. Okay, so I appreciate that, Commissioner, but I think we'll just stay with this.
Just to encourage you to stay, I don't think it's going to be that long of a meeting, and the consent agenda goes quickly, so I hope you'll be able to stay for the conversation. Thank you.
So if anybody else wants to step forward and continue the citizens' concerns.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought I would speak now, but just follow up on the other people that are here. My name is Jez Healy, and I have a letter for each of you, and I might as well just read it out loud for the record, and then I'll hand you the letter. I've been volunteering at the Taos County Juvenile Detention Center since the summer of 2016 after retiring from Taos Municipal Schools. I found the staff to be professional and caring with the residents and open to ideas that I present while often participating in those activities. As a retired teacher, I understand how adults can have a more positive and influential impact on residents due to a lower officer-resident ratio, allowing for more personal rapport conducive to rehabilitation. I fear that personalized relationships will be diminished in a larger facility, and the potential criminal influences will be more prevalent, while the increased distance from their families will have a negative impact on young residents. It would also be a shame and a waste to close a new clean functioning facility.
For some reason, I'm
The
not paying up
residents
the
here have
broadcast.
access to their families, professional and compassionate staff and support services, along with local volunteers who provide various activities to stimulate growth and development of our youth in their time of need. I urge you to maintain the services and facility of the Taos Juvenile Detention Center so our youth can reconcile their mistakes in a supportive environment close to home. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Irene Moy, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator with Green Tree Project here in Taos, and I'll keep this brief. I've also felt this nebulousness around what is happening. I don't know where you are in the process, and I don't know exactly what part the public comments play in that process, but I do want to say that Lieutenant Montoya does have an excellent model here. It's very rare nationally, the way that he's designed this program for rehabilitation. There are very few programs for youth in Taos, and we would hate to see the loss of one of the only programs that do exist for young people here. We also feel that sending the local youth out of the community is not ideal. especially if they're being exposed to other incarcerated youth who may be from more dangerous backgrounds. And we'd rather keep them close to their communities and united with their community as much as they can be. I think when I consider low numbers in a juvenile detention center, I think that's a good thing overall. And so if it's not cost effective, then I have an urge to sort of want to get creative. Like, what else can it be combined with? How can it be effective? For example, combined with another kind of program, or with a different way of interacting with the youth or adults in the community. I do know that we have a focus on prevention, diversion, reducing recidivism, and this trauma-informed care model that's been mentioned. And we would say that if it does have to happen, that it closes, we would hope that the funds are still put toward youth services and resources in Taos County. Thank you very much.
Any other citizens' concerns? You got 2 minutes.
Good morning, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Tough crowd. Good morning, commissioners. I want to just switch gears for just a little bit. This isn't a concern, this is actually a community positive that I want to report on. Our first weekend of doing spay and neuters, in conjunction with county funds and PAWS, as well as Stray Hearts, was a huge success. We did 54 total animals. And we are already booked for the next coming weekends. The only weekend so far is the last one, which falls on Memorial Weekend, that we have some significant openings on. And we may have to reevaluate that one just because of the holiday. But I'm proud of that. That's a huge accomplishment. Fix the problem on the front end. Maybe in years to come, we won't have the problem on the back end of confinement. And the other thing is, I wanted to report that we grew beards, the sheriff's office in Deputy, and we did a Shave the Sheriff fundraiser. The money and proceeds from that went to the Special Olympics Taos chapter for their travels and room expenses when those athletes go to competition down in Albuquerque. Between that and a basketball fundraiser, we presented a check to the Special Olympics coordinator yesterday for $1,150 that we raised to help support those athletes. So I'm very proud of the entire office that participated in that and took it upon themselves to go out and collect donations. Thanks.
Commissioner Lincoln.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, you didn't get cut up too badly, did you? In the shade?
It was a little awkward the first day.
How many animals do you think we'll get for the 25,000?
I'd have to sit down and punch that out. I'm not real sure. If we keep going at the trend that we're going, multiply that times the 4 weekends. So yeah, it comes out to like $100 per animal.
Okay, so 250 more or less. Well, if the openings continue, down the line, if you don't feel like you're going to fill it out, open it up to the town residents.
We can do that. We can also work with Stray Hearts to fill any vacancies of people that don't show up. And we will be selecting on animals that we believe will be readopted back into our community, not outsourced to another state.
Great, well, it's a good first effort. I think in the future we're going to have to bring that $100 per animal down, but this is a good first effort. Appreciate it.
I agree with you. I'd love to see that number come down. Nobody would bid on it any cheaper.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other citizens' concerns? Hearing none, it is 9:30. We'll close citizen concerns. We'll move on to item 7 is a presentation. A is a presentation from Civics Plus regarding Taos County Web redesign. Jennifer,
Morning, Commissioners. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Balanek. She's from Civic Plus, the company that's going to be designing our new website. She has a presentation for you.
presentations are 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I will try to keep it brief. I just want to give you an overview of the project. We look at our websites as being an enterprise-wide project. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the tool itself and then talk about why I'm here this week and what some of the tasks will be for the county departments between now and the launch of the new website. So we're really excited about this project. Just a little bit about myself. I have been working with local governments for about 24 years. I bring a big breadth of knowledge. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's in public administration. I've worked in planning. I've worked in ordinance codification. So I've seen just about most all of the things that your departments will be dealing with. And hopefully, as I have conversations with them, I can help them identify areas of content that will help bring them to news stories or even department tasks that they do day to day. Civic Plus is based in Manhattan, Kansas. We are one of the leading, if not the leading, providers of government websites. We only work with local governments. We are here this week to talk about Civic Engage. Civic Engage is the website program, but we do have a mass notification program, HR, recreation, and clerk. So hopefully down the line we'll have an opportunity to maybe bring those into the platform that the county has decided to go with. The agenda is just to talk about the methodology, Civic Engage, again, being that product of the website, the process and rules that we have from your core team and then the departments, and then just a quick review of the timeline and questions and answers from all of you. So the methodology that we take is a 6-phase process. It is what we're calling informed build. And the first phase has already been completed. You've initiated it, and we appreciate your selection of Civic Plus as that partner to help you down this path. This week, I'm here to do the analyze. So we're going to start looking into the current content. And then from there, the design and build will happen, and then optimization of the content, and then training, which is right now set for September, and then the launch of the website, which I believe is November 8th, is what you're shooting for. So it's a long process, but it's also a very short process. It seems like a long time, but let me tell you, when we get going into it, you're going to be like, wow, it's November 8th already. And then the big thing to remember is that when this website is launched November 8th, it is only the beginning. The project is not over. The website is designed to be changed daily, weekly, as much as you need it to. It is not set in stone. The look, the feel, the content can all be changed. And we encourage that, and that's what we try to teach you to do. So it moves into a continuous improvement at that point. Okay. One size does not fit all. Taos County is not Maricopa County, Arizona. We don't have one set design that we try to shoehorn everybody in. So again, part of what our team has already done is to try to uncover what it is that Taos County needs. And then again, as I sit here and talk with departments this week, we will talk about how we scale it to what your specific needs are. And then, like I said, continuous improvement. I can't stress that enough, how important it is that once this website is launched, that you encourage the use of it and the evergreenness of it, keeping it current and updated. Civic Engage is a content management system. It is built with modules. So the modules are containers in the back end of the system. The website you have right now has not been updated very much, and it does not have these modules. You have to outsource the updating of it. These modules, alerts, bids, calendars, you won't use our agenda center because you have your IQM2, your seller program, the news flash, the integration with social media. I know you don't have a lot of that now, but a lot of these tools are designed so that the departments can actually update that content. You won't have to pay somebody and wait 6 months to give them a bulk set of content. It will be able to be updated daily. By the time somebody says, hey, can you take a look at this and update, here's my 5 things I want you to update, they could have done that themselves. Okay. Design-wise, the homepage is, where most of the content is presented from a county level perspective. And then within the departments, they can have their own home pages of sorts. You can see here, all of these designs are very different, and the core team is working through some of that. Some of the key components normally on a home page are what we call global navigation, and then we have graphic buttons, which are the quick hits. I could imagine maybe burn permits at a certain time of year. Burn permits might be a graphic button. It's what people want to do. You can incorporate a lot of times the spay and neuter, the pet things. Those are often buttons that you would see seasonally, so that when somebody sees that homepage, that's the first thing they see, and they click on that button, and it takes them to the task that they need to do. The departments will have their own pages. They'll have their own navigation on the left-hand side. They'll have their content in the middle, and then typically the contact information is on the right-hand side. We take all of this content and we set it up for you to begin with. And we set the format and the standard. It's all ADA compliant according to the new rules that came out January 18th for counties and cities to be compliant with accessibility. So we'll take care of all that for you. This is just an example of another page that how they would look. See how they're very nice and clean. They have that consistent format and look to it, and the contact information will be right up there in the right-hand corner so that they know who to call, where the offices are located, how they get there, what the hours are. The modules are, you fill out a form and you save it. So from a staff perspective, it'll be very easy for them to update. Each department can have their own category within each module. The calendar will filter in. If you have more than one calendar, you can have a meetings calendar where all the meetings are. You can have department calendars for events. They all filter in, and the citizens will see it as a calendar with all of the events on there. But as you're going to see in a few minutes, there's a notification system. So if somebody is only interested in meetings, they can sign up to receive notifications when new meetings go on the calendar. If they're more interested in events, they can sign up for that. So gone are the days when you have to have citizens sign up to receive everything. And then we know that what happens is they get inundated and there's a lot of stuff that they don't care about, and they end up filtering themselves off because it's just a lot of things that they're not interested in. So we try to make that very specific, and we give them the opportunity to self-select and subscribe. You do have Civic Send included in the project. Civic Send is a mass communications notification system where you can do visually rich brochures, newsletters, things like we see here on this screen. This will also automatically post to Facebook and Twitter. So if a department does have a Facebook or Twitter page, if they build a newsletter or some sort of a brochure or a notification, then when they post that, it can automatically post to those social media outlets as well. Online forms, one of the ones that I've heard already is the burn permit. That burn permit can be turned into an online form. When that form is filled out, it will automatically email whoever in the county is to receive that. Throughout the form, there can be conditions built in, and maybe person X gets the form, but if they select the time of the week that they want it to burn, or if it's on the weekend, or whatever the condition may be, it can also email another person within the county or one or more people. And it's all a database, so then you can extract that data and you can keep track of how many permits went out this month, how many permits went out this quarter, how many went out this year, where's the peaks, where's the valleys in that. And obviously, as I heard in the news this week, if you need to not have somebody burning, then there's ways that can help you with that as well. Okay, so the online form center is one of the key efficiency tools that we have. The news flash, I've heard a lot of stories just in this short time this morning here, how the news flash will be able to help. Again, when you post into story, it can notify people automatically. And that's what this page is here. The top one is the alert center. If you do have a burn ban, This alert can go across the top of the page, and it can notify people. You can put updates there. Maybe you think the burn ban's gonna go through Thursday, but it has to be extended into the weekend. All of this is done automatically. It can be done mobily, because this is in the cloud. And you can have that notification be right at the top of the county's page, as well as emailed or texted to your citizens. Calendars, news, job posting, bids, all of those can have categories within them that automatically notify people when there's new content put on there. The pages are drag and drop. Again, you won't have to send this off to somebody to do. It's done in live time. So as the departments are thinking about a change, if there's a new rate that they need to update, or if there's a new contact, they will do that in live time. And it's done through these little widgets that are just drag and drop onto the page. It is all mobile responsive. It is desktop, it is tablet, many types of phones. What that means is when the design is created, all of that content shrinks and it knows how to scale itself. If you remember back in the 90s when we first had websites and you went to look at something, it was all like half hanging off the page. The sites now are called mobile responsive, and we really encourage designing for mobile responsiveness. In some communities, we're seeing 70% mobile access. That number is rising. So this week, as far as the process and the roles, I'm going to be meeting with the departments, and we're going to talk about the goals for the department, the goals for the county, for the website overall, and then we're going to start discussing the content. As I've seen, because of the current website, there's not a lot of content on the site now. So I'm going to help them think about their audience, think about their business processes that they do daily, and then try to align those modules that I've described and how they can help them in their daily duties and tasks. And then there'll be some assignments. So, I have some tools that will help them create new content and base that on what citizens are asking them for. They will have to go through the process of analyzing any content that is there. We're going to have to make a decision, do we keep it or do we just start from scratch? And again, I have some tools that will help them with that. We like to talk about the 3 a.m. test. So if a citizen was sitting there and all of a sudden they decided that they wanted to do a certain task with the county, and how far could they get if it was 3 o'clock in the morning to find the steps that they need to do to complete that task? So we encourage you, because you don't want them to call you at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if they don't have to drive down here, even though you have free parking in a nice parking lot, if you can help them get 80% of the process completed before they have to take that time off and come down here, then that's how we encourage everybody to think. We also think about one-stop shopping. So if there's a permit process, what's the first thing you need to do? Who does this permit pertain to? What steps do you need to go to get the permit? How do you fill it out? What is the timeline? Just walk them right through all of those steps. Okay. And then as far as expectations, again, it is an enterprise-wide project. It's not an IT project. It is really from commissioners all the way down to the citizens. It's an enterprise-wide project. So there are some steps that we need to take. We want to encourage the departments to take time. I know that they have duties to do on a daily basis, but it really is important to set aside some time to work on it. We encourage departments to talk to each other. A lot of times one department might be responsible for a task, but it also impacts another department as well. So how do they present that in a cohesive manner so that it doesn't matter what department is doing the task, but the citizen can look at it and say, this is what I need to do. A lot of times we try to think organizationally how our org chart is, but citizens don't know what our org chart is. They just know that they need to complete A, B, or C. So again, taking the time to examine the content, thinking outside of the box, thinking differently about how they present the content, what content they need to present, and really what are the residents asking for. You've got enough time so that when people come in on a daily basis, ask them, you know, what is it that, why did you have to come here today? What could we have done differently to help present this content? Do you access it online? Would you access it online? So you've got some time to take and incorporate that citizen comment period as well. From a key date perspective, again, this week we've got 3 days. I'll be here working with the departments. There'll be a follow-up session that will be virtually. That's going to be in July. The content cutoff date, we call it, is September 28th. That's basically when our team will take all of the content, whether it's from the website or whether it's new content, and we will start building it into the content management system. And then the last week of October, it'll be training, and then set to launch November 8th. Okay. Questions?
Commissioners, any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Jennifer, for being here. A lot of data to organize. I'm impressed, and I think we're in good hands. I did have a couple of questions about, I like that you're going to have a place where people can write issues and comments or report a problem. My question about the open data portal. I've been told from Foundation for Open Government that we need a format where people can copy and paste data and not have to go through the trouble. Sometimes formats you can't extract a certain page. You have to take the whole page, or you have to do a screenshot, and then you have to rename it. So I'm hoping that the data is easily downloadable for people. And I don't know the terminology for the right format for that, but I want to make sure that people can manipulate the data for people who want to do research or they want to kind of see trends in various departments. So that's important to me. Okay. I don't know what format you use. Also, my other concern, like I saw Socorro County, when you go to their home page, they have a little side page of their Facebook postings. It's like right there, and I think that's good. But I think also my main concern right now is I've been attempting to advocate for crime stats, crime data, so citizens can go and see where burglaries are happening, where overdose deaths are happening, what's going on. Taos County. Right now, we have no idea. And so I don't know how you implement that. I know there's software like Albuquerque has, but I think that's important. And I don't know if the department can interface with Spillman to upload that kind of data, or if you can create maps that show where the crime is and then keep a running total yearly of the crime. I'd also like to get state police at some point data and the town of Taos, because we have no idea what's really going on here. And to me, I think the citizens deserve to know that. So those are just a couple of my comments. And then we have a spell check, so people don't spell.
There's a spell check built out throughout. So
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners, any other questions?
We got responses from...
Oh.
Sure, just let me respond to that. As I work with departments, we will talk about if there was a third party that maybe that they could use. Some are free, some are paid. I have a lot of examples of other jurisdictions as well, so we can take a look at that. And one thing I did not mention is that at this phase, sometimes we can't accomplish everything, but we could come up with a plan for how we can make that and what the steps are to go once the site is launched, what are the steps to follow through to make some of those things happen. So thank you for your comments. I've got them noted, and we will be sure to address those with the departments.
Okay. Commissioners? Mr. Chairman, when will the website be up and running?
November 8th is the date. Yeah. Subject to change, but that's usually a change based on county. So if they're not ready yet, we can, it's not set in stone. but we're pretty good about hitting that as long as you guys can hit your deadlines.
And so what deadline will we put down?
It's basically that content cutoff date, which is the end of September. So, there's some design decisions that they have to make, and our project manager will keep them on task. They're pretty good. They've hit all the deadlines so far. So I think we'll be in good shape with that.
Good. Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Thanks, Chairman. So it seems like a really useful idea to have all the department heads asking citizens when they come in, what would be helpful. And so I'm glad you're meeting with the department heads the next few days. I'm sure you'll hammer that home and see what we come up with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
And Mr. Chairman, I like the idea that each department will do their own mission statement. Is that correct? I saw part of that presentation had mission statements of each department.
Well, typically we don't suggest mission statements go on the website. If you think about the way that citizens are accessing a website, most of the time it's from a phone or small device, and they're there to perform a task in a short period of time. So the first thing that when you land on a department's page, again, if going back to the one-stop shop, having to read through the department's mission statement is not what they're there for. So is it important for a department to have a mission statement or to have goals as to how they want to interact? Yes, but we're probably not going to suggest that goes front and center on the website.
I might start the conversation off wrong right away with the department. Your mission said this. So, any other comments for Jennifer? All right, hearing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much again for the opportunity to partner.
Seeing how the timeline works for us, and hopefully we can be as responsive as we need to get this thing moving by November 8th.
November 8th.
When's the election?
Before that.
Okay, good, let's get it.
And I'll move it up too.
Mr. Chairman, as I've said before, FOG, they have in the past listed the best websites of all the 33 counties, and I want to be in the top 5.
You want to be in the top 5?
Sure do.
We'll put that down as a goal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next item is item 8. This is the consent agenda. Commissioners, we are going from A to Z, literally A to Z. So if all of you will bear with me, I might fumble up a little bit of my words here, but I will try my best. So the consent agenda, the items in the consent agenda below have been reviewed for the purposes of voting on all items with one vote. These items must be for the Commissioner's consideration and decision. In addition to that, Commissioners can have to review or have further discussion on any of the items that I will read through A to Z. And Commissioners, anytime you see, just mark off which ones you want to follow up the full from the consent agenda. Item A is approval of the DFA Resolution 24-217-18 fiscal year. A resolution requesting to adjust 2018 final budget to transfer permanent cash from general fund cash balance to capital fund as identified on Form S5, details of non-budgeted reserve for Cordova's Rehabilitation Bridge Project number 8672. Ms. Martinez, Finance Director. Item B is approval of the contract TCC 217-52 Renewal 1 of Northern Mountain Constructors. Mr. Pacheco, if you have any questions for Mr. Pacheco, Public Works, and or Mr. Jaramillo. Item C is approval of contract TCC 217-53 Renewal for MTC Inc. Mr. Jaramillo, Mr. Pacheco, if you have any questions. Item D is approval of budget adjustment for Capital Fund 0399-0119. Item E is approval of budget adjustment for largest tax non-promotional fund 0215-14. Ms. Martinez. Item F is approval of budget adjustment for clerk's recording fee fund 02250600. Item G is approval of a budget adjustment for Caliente Fire Department Fund 02061556. Item H is approval of budget adjustment, County Clerk Fund 01010600. Item I is approval of budget adjustment, Bull Caliente Fire Fund 02091556. Item J, approval of budget adjustment for Taos EMS Ambulance Fund 05091500. Item K is a resolution 218-23. This resolution requested the New Mexico State Transportation Commission approve the use of off-highway motor vehicles on sections of Highway 578 within Taos County line limits. Any questions? That will be for our county sheriff. Item L is approval of purchase of new extraction tools for Tres Piedras Fire Department. Item M is approval of purchase of new apparatus for the Tier Fire Department four-wheel drive Chevy Tahoe. Item N is approval of purchase of new apparatus for Cerro Fire Department 2,500-gallon dry side tanker. Item O is approval of new purchase of apparatuses for Carson Fire Department 2,000-gallon brush engine. Item P, approval to purchase new apparatuses for Hondo Seco Fire Department 1,000-gallon 4x4 pumper. Item Q is approval to purchase new apparatus for Tres Piedras Fire Department F-550 rescue truck. Item R is approval of purchase of apparatus for Cerro Fire Department Type 5 wildland fire truck. Right. Okay. Item S is approval for out-of-state travel on actual reimbursement for the Tier Fire Department members Jonah Olson, Reynel Sanchez Cordova, Chris Cote, Mike Cordova, to attend the annual IAFC Fire Rescue International Conference in Dallas, August 7th through the 12th. Item T is approval to purchase a new pumper for Peñasco Fire Truck. Item U, approval of award of RFP 2018-9, Comprehensive Inmate Medical Services, Taos County. Ms. Vigil, Chief Procurement Officer, with any questions. Item V is approval of the GM Emulsion TCC 2018-28 contract for Rabbit Valley Road. Item W is approval of resolution 2018-25, a resolution authorizing the county, Taos County, to pick up 8.43% of the municipal police member coverage plan 5 member contributions in effect for July 1st, 2018. Mr. Cordova, any questions? Item X, approval of resolution 2018-26, a resolution authorizing Taos County to pick up 8.75% of the municipal general member coverage plan 4 member contributions for July, in effect July 1st, 2018. Item Y is approval of resolution 2018-27, a resolution considering the Taos County to pick up 8.2% of the municipal detention officer member coverage plan 1 member contribution would start in effect July 1st, 2018. Item Z is approval of contract with Cordova CPAs LLC for audit services, and that would be Ms. Lisa Vigil if they're the Chief Procurement Officer.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to set a motion to approve the items in the consent agenda, all but items B, C, X, and Y.
B, C,
X, and Y.
X, and Y.
Just want a little bit more information.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and, is there anything else from any other commissioner that would like to be taken off consent this time? I'll second. Hearing none. Ms. Clerk, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes. We'll go to item B, which is approval of contract TCC 2017-52 renewal of 1 for Northern Mountain Constructors. Mr. Avenir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Before you, we have renewal number 1 for contract 2017-52 052. Last fiscal year, Ms. Hill and the Public Works Department issued a request for proposal, an invitation to bid for road material products. So it's a different type of gravel, we solicited bids for. So both items B and C, Northern Mountain Constructors and Muscadinus Trucking Company responded to the invitation to bid. Last year we awarded them the contracts, and items B and C are to renew those contracts for fiscal year beginning July 1. So we're trying to be proactive and get the contracts done early. So we're going to be bombarding you guys with contracts in June and May, so we're trying to get as many contracts through currently.
Okay, thank you. That takes care of item B and C?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item X and Y. Mr. Cordova?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Do we go ahead and do that motion with those, or do I do it?
Do B and
Okay, so let's go ahead and entertain a motion.
For items A and C and C. Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, they have to be separate, Mr. Chairman.
It's all separate, so.
Okay, so I will go ahead and set a motion for the approval of item B, the consent agenda.
Second.
Everybody else has talked today, we got 2 seconds, okay? Make sure that the commissioner's got 2 seconds. Go ahead and please call roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
And the same with item C of the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman. Move for approval.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Clerk call roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes. We'll go ahead and move on to item X. This is that approval of the resolution 2018-216. Mr. Cordova.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, items W, X, and Y are all related to the last meeting. We presented you with the resolutions where we would like to buy down some of the employees' portion of their para pickup. And so this gets us to roughly 1.5 percentage points. We're allowed a total of 75% of the employees' percentage, so we still have a ways to go because we have 3 different plans, there's 3 different resolutions. So I stand for the questions.
And the same probably for item Y.
Yes, item Y is the same, that's specific to our detention officer plan. X is specific to all of our normal employees, and then W is the police.
Okay. Move for approval of item X, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made, but I hear a second.
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? Any other discussion? None? Okay.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Move for approval of item Y, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
The motion's been made, second as well. Please call roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners, for approving the consent agenda. Next item is item 9. This is a department matter. This is discussion, consideration, and decision regarding the Juvenile Detention Center. We will have Mr. Leandro Cordova, Nelson Aveta, Detention Director, and Andrew Contreras, Lieutenant of the JDC, presenting.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Obviously, this is going to be a good discussion. We have some good comments earlier in our citizens' concerns about the detention center. And before I get started, I really want to echo a lot of what they said about Lieutenant Montoya and the program that we are currently running at Taos Juvenile Detention Center. It has been applauded in the past. It certainly is a high-functioning program. And so that isn't the issue at all that we're dealing with here today. We know that because of the hard work of Lieutenant Montoya and the staff over at JDC, we basically bought another year of keeping that facility functioning while we attempted to go down the road of looking at the residential treatment center option that was presented by Lieutenant Montoya and other members of the community. We're not giving up on that plan. As I reported back to the board about a month and a half ago, CYFD's pretty much put a stop to doing it within this facility. I've been really trying to get a meeting with the Secretary of CYFD, which is scheduled for May 14th. Part of why we didn't have this discussion prior to today was I really wanted to have that meeting with the Secretary to see what other options we had and if there was any possibility of maybe influencing the decision in a different way to get that program kicked off at our facility. Like I said, that meeting is scheduled for May 14th, so here we are today. I also have heard concerns, I'll be honest, from the union and other members of the county that say that they haven't been involved in this conversation. This is step one in my mind. I'm coming to the board so that you could give me direction on how to continue to move forward with this. So it was not intentional to not have the union involved. The union will be involved upon a decision. I didn't want to get them overly involved prior to knowing what the direction was from this board. So that's why we're here today. I am a little late because of my meeting with the Secretary. I really wanted to have that before I presented to the board. That isn't happening. So now we are at a point where we need to make decisions to move forward with our budget. So that's basically the premise of this discussion today. It has nothing to do with the program or the lack of progress with our program. We're grateful for all the support in the community, and we're thankful for all of the nonprofits and community leaders that come in and help within our detention center. But when it does come down to dollars and cents, that's why we're here. I presented to the board a year ago that this is a difficult decision to make for us, and we really are losing money at the juvenile detention center, and it's not a small amount of money. It is a pretty significant amount of money, and that's why I'm back again today to present some of those numbers that we've been looking at. And I am going to yield, of course, to Lieutenant Montoya and Mr. Nelson Abate, our warden, for any specific questions, but I'm going to go ahead and lead in with the numbers and how that looks for the county. Now the consent agenda, you guys just approved a award for a new provider for health and care at the detention center. That cost is going to increase by a little under $100,000 for the first year. One of the reasons we chose the contractor we chose is because some of those upfront costs will benefit the county in the long term, mainly the electronic medical records, which will be provided by this new vendor. We will pay for it, but we get to keep it. So at the end of the day, this new provider is going to give us something that we haven't had from past providers. However, the cost is significant in this first year, with the cost maintaining itself over time. That cost does need to be absorbed somewhere. So that would go into the adult side at the $645,000 price range that we're looking at potentially. We still have the ability to negotiate that contract between now and the end of the year, so we hope to bring that down a little bit. Another opportunity potentially is doing our own electronic monitoring. We've talked about that a few times with the board. If we were able to have the capacity at the adult side, we would be able to administer that program, save a little bit of money on that contract, and do some of that in-house. You have maybe a little better quality of monitoring. So that's another option. But essentially, rough proposal, like I said, this is step one. We have not really had the opportunity to go back and vet out these issues with the union or with the employees, but a rough proposal because of the needs of the adult side. We've had staffing patterns presented to me from the warden. Roughly right now, we're probably short of about 2 officers per shift at the adult side. They're making do. We're doing as well as we can. We've done a great job of managing the population with the staff we have, but it does leave very little room for the ability for people to call in when we are short-staffed for other reasons, or there's an FMLA issue, or someone's out for whatever extended period of time. It does present staffing challenges at the adult side. And for ultimately liability purposes, we should be fully staffed as the standards set forth. So the warden has worked on that staffing pattern and essentially tells us we need about 8 more officers to the adult side. So we would propose to move 8 of the 12 officers over at the juvenile, those positions would be moved over to the adult side. We are asking for that just to make our adult side functioning at the level that is expected by the standards. We would also definitely want to keep Lieutenant Montoya. We definitely need to keep that presence, because we know that we're not done with juveniles. Just not housing them doesn't mean that we're not responsible for the juveniles that the Taos County is picking up. We did realize in some of the numbers, and I'll let Andrew, and I'll try to answer that if there's more questions, but we did a rough look at last year, the cost of the detainees that we kept, the kids that we kept that were actually Taos County's responsibility. Had we closed a year ago and had to send those detainees to Santa Fe, it would have cost us roughly $90,000 a year. So we would be prepared for that cost in this new budget, move about $100,000 into the adult side for the housing of the juveniles for that purpose. So rough numbers, just looking at what the potential cost would be to move the juvenile, or to close the juvenile and move some of those staff over to the adult. We're not saving money. We're not saving money to meet the needs of the adult side. We're still gonna have to come out of funds to even make this happen. So we're looking at roughly a $500,000 potential increase to the budget after we can recoup some of our expenses through things like the healthcare assistance fund and things like that, and possible negotiations of our contracts. If we don't close the juvenile side, we're looking at a little over $1 million increase to those two. And just in order to be able to staff the juvenile side accordingly, because they are short-staffed as well. If we keep the juvenile side open, we're going to need to provide at least 2 more officers just to keep the needs there for the same reasons I presented on the adult side. We still need to come up with some kind of new officers for the adult side. So that's going to be a cost that we're going to have to absorb if we keep this other side open. And then that would probably take away our ability to provide more officers for the SO, a fire marshal, any other initiatives that we had in mind for our new budget. So that's basically the financial picture of why we're here today to talk about this. And so I'll stand for any questions on the numbers. And of course, Lieutenant Montoya and Director Aveta are here to answer any questions about the logistics of the detention center.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the total budget for the juvenile detention currently?
It's $956, but we don't. That's what we budget. Typically, the last year, in fiscal year 17, we actually spent $882,790. So about $883 is what we actually spent in the last fiscal year.
Thank you.
Commissioner McDormand.
Thanks, Chairman. 883 we spent, how much did we take in?
We brought in last fiscal year for just juvenile, $71,240. And that's considering we do house more of our neighbors' juveniles than we do our own.
So that's a loss of 810, obviously. But why are you paying it at 500?
Because as I said, there's still increases that were required for adult side. So if we are able to meet the staffing requirements that were presented to us, that's going to increase the cost of the adult side significantly. That's 8 new positions on their side. That's about the $500,000 by itself. There's 12 positions at the juvenile side. If we move those 8 plus the lieutenant, we're really looking at 3 potential positions that would be lost at the county. And keep in mind, Commissioners, these are rough numbers. I will get more details with direction. We'll certainly find more detail in these.
Mm-hmm. So the $500,000 loss that you quoted, that it would cost us to keep juvenile open for another year, that's because you'd have to hire 8 new staff members for adult and you wouldn't be able to just transfer over?
Let me make sure I'm clear, Commissioner Banking. It would cost us roughly $500,000 to close juvenile detention with the needs that are there at the adult side. To keep it open, we're talking over $1 million more to keep it open.
That's sort of what the numbers implied, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have to figure out a way to put some resources into the endangered, at-risk juvenile population. Right? I mean, the nonprofits who are working in the trenches and work with these kids tell us, and I believe them, that we've lost all these other services. This is like one of the last collecting places where we find these kids who are in trouble and can do something about it. And if we close, then that resource is gone, so, got any ideas?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Blankenhorn, you're right, but that is really beyond our decision-making. It's the courts that have created the situation. They are doing the sentencing of the juveniles. We're one of the last facilities our size to be open. You know, the trend across the state has been to close the juvenile detention centers because the trend from the courts is to incarcerate less juveniles. So I'm not denying what the nonprofit said at all. I can agree with that as well. I believe what the commission's done to help with that is the Healthcare Assistance Fund and the way they've been putting out those RFPs to try and get those services into the nonprofits' control and getting some of the money from indigent to do that. We've increased those contracts over time, kind of being proactive. That's not the only answer, of course, and we're not going to give up on the RTC. The RTC would really be the more valuable tool, in my mind. I think that is exactly what they were describing earlier as ideal, and the kind of programs that Lieutenant Montoya has implemented would do very well in an RTC environment. We all know that. But it does come down to is the desire of the courts and the legal system to continue to incarcerate juveniles, and it does not appear that that is the current, the feeling and the future feeling. I'm not in the courts, but what we can tell you over the last 2 years is we certainly have seen the decrease in population over there, especially within county residents. Like I said earlier, we are kind of probably serving our neighbors more than we're serving ourselves.
What ideas are we looking at to use the facility?
Right now, that's still up in the air. I'll be honest. What I would like to see is managers to keep it open for opportunities. We don't really have, as I mentioned, the resources to have an overflow. If we needed to, we've talked to the warden about it, and if he absolutely needed special management space, we would find a way to make that work over there for special management. But in the short term, we do not have any specific plans to utilize the building. I'll be honest with that. We're looking for options. We certainly will, and that is part of my meeting with the secretary. I do want to continue to have that conversation about short-term viability of starting an RTC here. Why can't we start it here? I understand, we all understand it's not the perfect location long-term, but if we could get it going, get some revenue generating, we could then self-sustain and find a place away from here that could serve that RTC. So that is one of our needs. We need to come up with ideas for the space.
Well, we need to impress that upon them and make something happen. And you know, when I'm thinking, can we postpone the closing, push really hard, and get the transition without a time gap?
Mr. Chairman, that's the will of the commission. We'll make it happen. Of course, we'll make it happen. That's the will. It will create budgetary concerns, and it will cause some differences in the budget we'll present to you versus what we would hope to present to you. So, yes, of course, we can keep it open, but it is going to affect so many other things. One more reason I'm asking for some direction, decision, rumors are out there. We've had some discussion about it, so the employees rightfully are concerned. We do have a policy within our personnel policies on a reduction in force that does stipulate severance and seniority, and it directs how we would go about that process, but it's important for me as manager to know what the direction is so I can convey that to those employees that are concerned. So I am looking for direction. If you need more time, I can understand that. I appreciate that, but it does certainly set us all back a little bit in terms of how we're going to craft our budget.
Yeah, 80 grand a month or so, but so if we also need to explore ideas of the money saved, taking a portion of the money saved and putting it into a program. But then you need a program, and that's the hard part.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Romero. So, Mr. Chairman, Leandro, what has been the population overall last year? What the average population on a daily basis?
I'll let Mr. Montoya answer that.
Our average daily population fluctuates between 3 and 5, with an average length of stay of about 17 days.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, so let me just rephrase this. What I hear is the current juvenile detention budget is about $900,000, more or less. If we close it 500,000 of that goes to the adult side for additional staffing, and then we have to factor in the medical contract, which has gone up. So we're talking roughly about 600,000 of that. 900,000 is for adult detention. Am I correct on that? Can you?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Brown, let me clarify one more time. The entire amount of savings would go over to the adult side, including some more money potentially to cover what you just described, the 8 positions, an increase in the healthcare contract. All of the costs of those healthcare contracts then go into the adult side where before we were splitting them between the two. So really there's no savings. In fact, there may still be more resources needed even if we close the juvenile.
So then there won't be savings, there won't be any carryover for programs that was referenced. So, okay, that's fine. So what I hear you now say is that all that money will be absorbed into the adult detention. Okay, got that. At some point I'd like to hear the presentations, but I am very curious on the special management area, where it is now and how it would benefit to move it to the now juvenile area. So if somebody could comment, what's your average special management numbers that you're seeing?
So again, good morning, Commission. In regards to the adult detention and the juvenile detention, in regards to special management, basically the adult detention really has no room for special management. Normally what's happening now on a day-to-day basis, depending on the severity of the infractions that occur within the facility, a lot of times they'll go ahead and they'll secure the detainees within that housing area, which really isn't special management. Special management should be separation from a population setting. Currently, we really don't have that based on the need of the facility because we identify safekeeping individuals that can't function within a general population, but that doesn't make them special management. Just a special need safekeeping, just to ensure their safety. Again, the way we managed it in the 2 years that I've been there, and we've been very lucky, but what happens is a lot of times is we'll send an officer into that area while that individual comes out during their tier time. We give them as much out of the cell time as possible to meet the standard, which is about 2 hours. So a lot of times what I like to do is, I can split it up or whatever I may have to do, but we still need to give them the showers. We still need to, and luckily, we don't have that type of individual that can be very disruptive. Now, let's just say we do have, which we have 2 of them currently, and we actually transferred them to Santa Fe. Why Santa Fe? Because we have a contract with Santa Fe, and because they actually have a special management unit. These individuals can be managed at a different level. Currently, our facility has no special management. Special management, just to draw a little clearer picture, is when a detainee comes out of the cell to the shower, that detainee should be restrained, mechanical restraints. Once they get to the shower, they remove the restraints. They give them 15 minutes, 20 minutes to conduct their shower. Then the officer goes back, puts the mechanical restraints, and escorts back to the cell. We don't have that luxury. Our showers don't have cages, and even if they did, it wouldn't work the way this facility is set up right now. Our population has increased, not by much, but we've been averaging 70, 75 to 76 detainees.
Per year?
Well, it's increased more most recently.
Per day.
Right, per day. So, I have seen the facility where the population has gone down to 38. But now, you know, with these new rulings that are set forth, you're seeing the duration of stay a little bit longer. So therefore, a special management in our facility would be beneficial. I would love to see an extra wing being built right off to the side. And I understand, you know, the need of the juvenile also. So therefore, it's like trying to, you know, to juggle and figure out which is the best fit for the community. I believe Andrew has a passion, and I see what he does. And I believe the community also, that it's a resource. So therefore, as for special management, that's what special management would do. I agree with the county manager, probably vacate the juvenile for amount of time needed. But I do also agree that instead of having the building idle, we need to make best use of that building.
So can you define who is a special management person? It's usually mentally ill.
Special management surrounds itself around mentally ill individuals, which currently, right now, when we have a mentally ill person, and we'd like to process with them as much as possible. But unfortunately, when they are at that level, and all our other cells are being filled, normally we move them into booking. And that's not the answer. Special management also revolves themselves around problematic detainees. Detainees who are continuously extorting from others, beating up others. Those are problems. Destroying the facility, assaulting staff. This is what any adult detention, to include juvenile, this is what we deal with. And that is the picture. So,
Well, this is my concern, is when I've been in the jail and I've heard people yelling and screaming in the booking area because they're mentally ill, and we're continuing to put mentally ill people in jail. The only place they have right now is the booking area. And if we had that other side to put those SMU people, that's a little more humane in my mind. The cells are a little larger, or is the booking area, those cells in the booking area, are they smaller or the same?
well, the booking area, the cells are larger, but there's no bunk.
You sleep on the
Basically what
floor.
happens is they give them a mattress, and if they need to, they'll give them, well, I'll just say they give them a mattress and they'll sleep on the mattress.
So can you give, that's what I really like to know, is the numbers of the special management needs per day. Like, you said you have 2 now, but what's the average that you need?
The average per day is going to average right around 2 to 3.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. So Tri-County now, I think, has the capacity as an organization to operate an 8 to 10 bed residential treatment facility that would absolutely help you with those special needs individuals.
I don't believe so.
No, not the kids. I'm not talking kids.
No, the adults, no.
I'm talking adults.
No.
What happened? What did I say?
See, you didn't even take my turn. I didn't think about it. Go ahead and ask your question. Well, make your comment.
Okay, let me check that. So, you know, none of us want to put people with behavioral health issues into jail, and so we have to have another option for them. And Tri-County, I believe, can now operate billing Medicaid without asking us for operational funds for treatment beds. And I'm not saying there necessarily, although if it's possible if the juvenile center was open, to work something out. But the town building that we were trying before, I'm just saying that we have an option in the community that we didn't previously have, and I want us to take advantage of it, and it will help the people that we serve, and it will also help the detention center budget. Wrong, am I wrong? Yeah, who said yes? No, I think that's...
I think it'd be a good question for Mr. Gross to figure out exactly what the extended care is for people, adults.
Yeah.
I'm not talking children, but I think it's limited at this point. So if we're looking at people with long-term care needs, I think, I'm not sure that Tri-County, we don't have Dr. Gross here or Mr. Gross to
Right.
answer that question.
Okay, well, we'll see. It's a little bit off topic, but...
Well, I guess if there could be some clarification of a special management individual is somebody, I understand that that individual is disruptive in the jail, does probably have some issues that need to be taken care of with a different kind of medical care, but they are not individuals that can be put at any other location without supervision by an officer. That's what I would understand as special.
That's correct.
If you're somebody that's got special needs, that is mentally ill, is located or put in a different facility that isn't going to hurt others, isn't going to do things that in that nature is what I would understand Tri-County would do.
Yeah.
But we're looking at individuals that are aggressive in nature, are combative with the system, and need special management with 2 officers all the time to make sure that the safety of that individual and officers are good. That's what I would understand special management rooms or needs to be there in the detention center.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And once again, just mind you that a special management unit needs to be retrofitted to a special management unit. In other words, what we have now, we would have to retrofit either or units to make it fit that standard.
I'm sorry, you're saying retrofit on which side?
Well, either side, juvenile or adult, whichever is chosen. And when I say this, we need to harden the housing unit a little bit, meaning that we're going to have to put cages in the showers. We're going to have to put certain other cages to include possibly even looking at the direct yard. We give them limited movement, but yet enough out of the cell time.
Is there a gymnasium in the juvenile facility?
There is.
So could you
That could be utilized.
use for
As long as it's one detainee at a time
one
going out.
detainee? Yeah.
So we got, I don't want to get too far from the operation side of what you're doing and what the potential could be. My questions for the 3 of you could possibly be, one for Mr. Cordova first. If Cuesta PD brings in a juvenile, does Cuesta absorb the housing, or does it all on the county?
I believe it falls on the county. Is that true for the town?
At this time, and for the town as well.
So the county has been absorbing all of that. But when we have adults that get incarcerated, based on, because the village of Cuesta is bringing in an inmate, then the village gets charged for that.
That is correct, Commissioner, but a lot of times they're coming in on magistrate warrants.
Right. Okay.
Very seldomly do you see that the village of Cuesta brings somebody in on Cuesta charges.
Right. So, because we've had the conversation of 3 to 5 in the juvenile detention center, not to put anything on our police departments, I'm sure that that's why there's no house residences here, is because they're actively participating in what goes on in the community to keep the juveniles out, and or the court system, or whatever the case may be. I think that until we have some further communication on May 14th with CYFD, I think I'd only want to consider hearing more options and make a decision as a commission after that meeting on the 14th as to which way we go. and it gives us an opportunity to absorb a little bit more conversation that you want to have with the union and the staff as to what we want to do to extend or not extend.
If I may, one of the things that I've seen working there for 11 years is the mingling between the kids. One of the things that hasn't really been mentioned and brought up was what are the possibilities that are going to happen once our kids leave our community. If we send them to Santa Fe, they're going to be housed with Rio Arriba kids. They're going to be housed with kids from Santa Fe. They're going to be housed. They tend to see a lot more heavy-hitting crimes than we do. We have our occasional heavy-hitting crimes. We had a murder in Red River last year, 2 years ago. If we would have housed that kid in Santa Fe, that kid alone would have cost the county $64,000 to house because of the nature of the crime, and there was no opportunity to release on ankle monitor, things like that. That would have been a significant cost to the county, to our county. We had another young man from Espanola that was involved or alleged to be involved in another heavy crime. He was in our facility for 18 months, and his co-defendant was housed in Santa Fe. A lot of these things, such as if Santa Fe is willing to take our kids, is another question. Just because we have a contract with them doesn't mean they're forced to take our kids. We've turned away kids that have been a problem before. Clay County is having a really hard time housing their kids. They're driving from Tucumcari up to Taos because we're the only ones that'll house their kids at this point. If Santa Fe becomes crowded or they have staffing issues, we may have a really hard time finding a place within northern New Mexico to house our kids. San Juan County is 4 hours away. Curry County is 5 or 6 hours away. That's officers that are off the street during transport, whether they're sheriff's officers for courts or whether they're the police officer that arrested them. That also goes to overtime and things like that, and that's going to hit other departments' budgets as well. I actually took the liberty to invite, with the commission's permission, Will and his supervisors to come and speak to what has happened in some of the other counties, what some of the other counties that have closed their detention centers have seen in the community. So with your permission, if you'll allow that, I think that it goes to the importance of that.
Yeah, well, there's still going to be some more conversation between the commission. We have 3 to 5 kids, and those 3 to 5 kids, how many of them are Taos County residents?
Taos County, usually one of the 3.
One of 3.
Yeah.
So either we're not providing, we're not implementing anything out there to get these juveniles in here that need help, whether it's through the court system, through law enforcement, or whatever.
We have a very, very limited scope of what we can do, and Mr. Romero will be able to speak a little more to that. He can kind of go through the process and what is allowed. The state of New Mexico follows the Missouri model or the Cambiar model of the Annie Casey Foundation's Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. So the focus is to not house kids that are, unless it's absolutely necessary. Most of the kids we house are minor violations, but they don't have anybody to release them to. It's a problem because their parents are not fit to take care of them, their parents don't want them because they've been a problem, things like that. We're not serving, most of the kids that we get are not extremely criminal in nature. They don't have any alternatives for them. And we don't have a lot of alternatives in our community to house these kids. We have Dreamtree. Dreamtree gets full really quickly, and they house out-of-county kids as well. It's not really, detention really isn't the best place for any kid, even the ones that are heavy hitters. But it's in this community, it's the last stop option. So, I mean, if we had another place in the community that could handle these kids and that could deal with these kids in a more positive way, I'd be all for, shifting some of these resources to ADC. But without the clear answer as to what we're going to do with our kids and how we're going to handle some of these situations as they come up, and I just don't see, I think it's a bad idea, honestly.
Well, and I can appreciate that, those comments. If Mr. Corder would have had this meeting with CYFD last week, we'd have a different approach as to which way we're going. We're still kind of in unknown territory.
Agreed.
So I think if there's any questions, I guess the ratio for an officer to the juvenile is what?
Our ratio is 8 to 1, so we can house. Again, we have some issues with the way the facility is designed. We need to have a direct supervision officer. ADC their standards are a little different. They can have an officer run a housing unit by himself, standing outside the wall. If our kids are unsecured, we have to have an officer in that pod monitoring those kids' behavior at a ratio of 8-to-1. So if we have 12 kids in that boys pod, we're going to need an additional officer in there. We haven't seen that in about 4 years, to where we've needed that additional officer. So we really haven't staffed for that. If we have the male housing unit open right now, I'm actually supposed to be working the pod. I have them in a program so that I'm able to have one officer run control and one officer run the program with the male and the females that are there. If we are running it inside the housing units, I need 3 officers there at all times because I need that direct supervision.
So, am I correct that local kids, you see 12 a year? I kind of wanted to see numbers. I'm
trying to remember.
So maybe next
year. For sure. I believe last year we had 38 house kids.
And this year?
This year to date, I didn't collect that data. That was April 30th of last year to April 30th of this year.
Okay, and what is that average cost per kid, per budget?
So maybe this will help. The average cost basically to keep that thing open every day is a little over $2,400 a day. Just to keep it, just to staff it and the cost of running that thing. There was a stretch last year where we were closed for about we had no kids for about 7 days. The county lost $19,000 in that time. So I mean, when we bring in $130 per day on the contracts with our neighbors, which we are very low, that's the other problem, we're the lowest cost in the state for a juvenile detention center. That's why our neighbors really utilize us. If we raise our rates, I don't know if they'll utilize us. That's a question we'd have to ask them, or would they rather go to Santa Fe? Would they rather go to a different facility if we had to raise our rates to the same as Santa Fe? So you can see that if we have 3 kids in there at $130 a day that aren't ours, we're still losing quite a bit of money just by having the staff that are necessary to run it.
So I have one more question for Nelson. To get the jail accreditation, is it necessary to have an SMU, a unit?
That is correct.
We would not get that accreditation if we did not have, and currently we do not have the proper SMU area. So that says a lot. I do want to mention, thinking outside of the box, the state has just released the hearing date for the crisis triage rules, and it is all connected. That hearing date is May 30th. I have the rules, if anyone wants a copy. I have the hearing notice. This is the way the state is moving. 8 days, crisis triage stabilization, up to 16 beds allowed for kids or adults that come in. They have suicide problems, or it's a way to keep kids out of jail. Okay, so I would encourage everybody to learn about this, be at the hearing, make comments, because this is the way the state is moving and the way the state is funding. In addition, I do believe that if we were to decide to close ADC, that is when other nonprofits would step up to help these kids stay out of jail, keep them in the community, put them in a residential treatment setting. Now, as we know, I'm really sorry that all your hard work did not pay out for the RTC. However, it did not comply with the state rules. And whether I saw no indication in those rules of any waivers, that is why the state turned us down for that facility in the jail. Now, whether or not you can go back and say, will you waive the rules, or do the rules have to be changed? I do not think a secretary will waive a rule. I do not think so. So I hate to quash your hopes, but I don't see it ever happening in the juvenile place. And so that means we also then have to start thinking about how can we do a residential treatment center in a residential setting. And I think those are topics of discussion. The state is creating a mechanism to help keep these people out of jail. Whether we can afford it, whether we can fund it or staff it, or any nonprofit, that's why we need people at the hearing to talk about these new rules.
Thank you.
May 30th, and anybody wants the information.
Commissioner Romero. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so what happens to these individuals, these juveniles, young people, when they leave our facility? What are the results? What do we expect to gain from keeping them in the facility? What do the judges expect?
The judges, so being as that the initiative is to find alternatives to detention, most of the time that the kids leave our facility, they're released back to their parents. It's anybody's guess whether they're going to follow through with the conditions of release. A lot of the kids that I see that have been in detention once are brought back for violation of those conditions of release.
How soon does that happen?
Depends on the kid. I've had a young lady that has been released and 6 hours later was back. I've had other kids that have, and when she was brought back under new charges. I've had other kids that have gotten released on conditions of release and never come back. When they do come back, it's an average of 2 to 6 weeks, depending on if the judge is willing to sign the warrant and how the kid is complying with those conditions. We see a large number of kids go from the facility to treatment. That is kind of based on what's available to those kids because there aren't enough treatment beds in the state. The way it works with treatment is they have to have all the treatment centers in the state refuse to accept these kids before they can send them to an out-of-state treatment center. So sometimes those kids are out on the streets for a number of months before they're accepted into a treatment center. Again, Mr. Romero can speak a lot more to this. He has the process. He can recite the process in his sleep. He's been doing this a long time, and he would have a better understanding of what happens once they leave.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if you could give Leandro the number, he said 38, if you could give us the hard number to him and how many of those kids actually are returning out of that 38. I appreciate that.
All right, we'll go ahead and go forward with Commissioner coming up.
Thank you. My name is William Romero. I'm the Chief JPO for the 8th Judicial District, and it's Taos, Colfax, and Union. Specific to your question, with regards to what happens to kids that go to detention, more often than not, they're given conditions of release, and as Lieutenant mentioned, they do typically get sent back with a parent. As far as residential placement is concerned, out-of-home placement is concerned, there has to be a clinical need for that level of care. So basically, most of the kids you guys were talking about earlier with regards to what types of interventions are in place, well, I'm happy to say that through our office, we do a lot of informal interventions that never see a court process. More often than not, our informal caseload is a lot higher than the formal caseload. The only kids you're going to see in detention are those cases that are formalized through a court process. With regards to the out-of-home placement, the out-of-home placement typically takes a little bit of time just because we have to get assessments, updated psychosocial assessments or higher level assessments to determine that that child needs that level of care. We also have to prove to the MCOs that all of these prior interventions that we have attempted with these kids, that they're obviously not working to be able to get that level of care. The number of treatment beds, as mentioned previously, New Mexico is significantly low with regards to those. We presently, the closest RTC that we have is Desert Hills in Albuquerque. Typically, they have a lot of kids there from throughout the state, and they typically have a waiting period to be able to access their services. The next closest is going to be in Mesilla Valley, in Las Cruces, and then a little further to the Peak RTC down in Santa Teresa. When some of these RTCs deny the kids into their programs, then and only then are we able to talk to the MCOs about trying to get kids into a residential treatment center like Southern Peaks in Canyon City. But more often than not, most of our kids do end up going to New Mexico residential treatment centers. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but do you have other questions?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
These RTCs you just mentioned, are they run by nonprofits?
They are all private corporations.
So give me the best case scenario in Taos. If we, let's say, there were a nonprofit, we could find a facility, build a facility, whatever, put them in houses. How many beds would we need for Taos County? And what would it look, what's your best ideal scenario for an RTC here?
Well, I would, if it's okay, I would actually like to defer to Mr. Modis, Eric Modis. He used to be our clinical social worker in the office, but he's now in a new capacity. He's in charge of he's the regional clinical supervisor for the entire North. And he'd be much better able to answer that question, I think, if that would be okay. Sure.
Thank you. I was supposed to be in Santa Fe today, but I found out about the meeting and made accommodations, so thank you for hearing me. In regards to northern New Mexico, getting back to your question, Commissioner, I think a big part of it is within the last year, we probably placed over 100 kids out of Taos County residents in RTC treatments. Some of those kids were multiple placements. Some of the kids we actually have in detention. My job, given our mandates through the state, are to get kids out of detention as quickly as possible. And so a big part of that regarding bed availability, if you had a 15-bed facility, I'd probably fill it up in about 30 days. So part of what I think is hard for me to explain in regards to just opening up an RTC and that being the solution is that I think we're catching our kids too late systematically. I think we have our community as a county, we are very laxed in regards to accountability and boundaries for our kids. And so my worry in closing the detention center without an alternative, as well as Mr. Montoya said, that's kind of leaving them in limbo with even less boundaries than what we already have as a culture in a community and a county. And so I think programmatic pieces that we need to have in our community, whether that's through a nonprofit or county-based, I think that's the right direction to go. I was a little frustrated, to be honest with you, with our own department not approving the RTC. However, I see the concerns as well, that it's hard to just all of a sudden turn an RTC tomorrow, a detention center into an RTC tomorrow. So I understand those concerns that it's going to take more to make that a home-like environment and have a therapeutic progression for our kids. So for me, I like the idea and actually suggested that the county work alongside with a nonprofit to explore that option. And to be honest with you, Mr. Montoya and Leandro, they did a phenomenal job, where it usually takes about 5 years to start an RTC. They got 80% of the way within a 6-month time period. So I would encourage them not to give up on that, because they're 80% of the way. The only thing they couldn't get approved was the facility, which is really hard to get a detention center approved as an RTC. They went 80% of the ways developing policies, guidelines, according to certificates or statutes based on New Mexico standards. They came 80% of the way. If that could happen still by talking to the secretary, that would be amazing for our county, because we could definitely utilize that facility. I could get, if it's a 15-bed facility, we'll have it filled in about 15 days, because I supervise the 11th, 1st, 8th, and 4th judicial districts, so everything from I-40 north. All my clinical staff is in Farmington, Santa Fe, Taos, Raton. So all those offices, I have clinicians in each of those offices working with the highest risk kids, getting assessments in place to get them into RTC. What I liked about the idea here is that with those 100 kids I worked with within the last year, all of them pretty much 80% of them don't have any visits during RTC stays. Part of that is a problem because our families do not have stable transportation, or if they are working, they usually have a couple other kids in the home, and it's hard for them to go all the way down to Las Cruces, go down to even Albuquerque to visit their kids. So if we had something here, we could definitely, over time, just encourage our families to become stronger, healthier. The cost of it, definitely, if we could get the facility certified to bill Medicaid, that's where it would generate actually a revenue for our county rather than actually a deficit. And so I know commissioners are tasked with a very difficult thing in maintaining our county budget, keeping our systems in place, protecting our communities. And so I respect your opinions, and I would be happy to meet with you guys again, a little more prepared. But if you have any questions, that's kind of what I have for right now. But I compliment you at least having this conversation, because it does mean a lot, because our adult population also needs a lot of help programmatic-wise as well. When the detox wasn't there, I think we're struggling in serving the needs of our adults as well too. So programs is definitely a way I would encourage the county to look towards. Medicaid billing, utilizing HSD standards to comply with services, whether it's through a nonprofit or county-based, that's definitely the way to go.
Mr. Chairman, I would encourage you to work with Mr. Cordova in finding a location. And what I hear we could start with how many beds? I'm just trying to get a handle of a perfect world here.
Yeah, and so part of that is somewhat a business strategy. So I would meet with Mr. Cordova and probably talk about it more privately, what the county would potentially be looking into, because I think you have options of, we only have a shelter here, and the level of care, really that's level 1. And we have all the way up to level 3 treatment levels. And so you have level 1 basic, level 2 a little more intense, and then level 3 is on RTC really. And so part of a business strategy could be to address level 3 and level 2. And then we already have level 1 facilities in our community, so not taking over or putting them out of business, but supplementing that where it's profitable for the county and sustainable for the county. So I could talk to him a little bit about that, and we could see about a facility potentially and go from there before your next meeting.
What is the estimated cost of working in an RTC?
So once the RTC within the first 2 years, usually it's going to be a deficit. You're going to have probably about $100,000 deficit would be my estimate. The following years, you would probably overcome that deficit to be in the black, probably about $200,000 the first 2 years. So after the first 2 years. So you would probably generate a loss the first 2 years, and then after that, you would start seeing a $200,000 profit probably in the third and fourth year.
And so
that's just a guesstimate, of course. I'm just so you guys consider, and I think that's pretty fair with how I've been involved in the system.
And so when you say that you can fill up an RTC within 30 days, where would these clients be coming from?
So that's the great thing, is that we could have RTCs can set really. They have to have a screening process, of course, to see whether or not the structure of their program addresses substance abuse, whether it addresses suicidal ideation. So it has to be, it could be a broader program. Desert Hills has a 180-bed facility, which is crazy for our kids to go over to those types of facilities. That's way too much to manage, especially for a new facility. So a 30-bed, even a 25-bed facility would be sufficient for our county size. And at that point, we could definitely serve the needs of not only Taos County, but also northern New Mexico as a whole, because the average stay is 90 to 120 days in a residential facility. So again, specifically, we could get those kids from Taos County or the northern part of the region for sure.
What age group would we be looking at?
12 to 18.
12 to 18.
Yeah, usually we don't like having them with youth after their 18th birthday, but depending on the facility policy and procedures, I think we did review some of the policies. I don't think we would be needing to go beyond 18. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from Melinda and her group as to what their thoughts are with regards to this.
I also want to just mention about, is an RTC, is it preferred to be right in town or in a rural area? For instance, I heard there was somebody toured a ranch in Tres Piedras that's for sale. It's got a lot of beds. Is it best to have it right in town, or is it best to have it out somewhere?
Commissioner, the department kind of leaves that up to the facility.
Yeah, and what type of population you serve. And if it's a level 2 facility, then you could probably have them where they have jobs in the community, they integrate it into the community more. A higher level restriction, level 3, you could say. And of course, I'm speaking generally. Those ones usually you would prefer to have outside the general population, and so it's a variable.
So when we were looking, to answer the second half of your question about the ranch, when we were looking at the programming piece, because we are northern New Mexico and our biggest resource here is the wilderness, we were going to try to utilize a wilderness therapy program where we'd be taking kids out of the structure of the building and taking them hiking, fishing, things like that, because that's who we are. And there's a lot of evidence-based practices that kind of fall back on that type of activities, those types of activities. So we looked at the ranch in Tres Piedras. We also looked at a ranch in San Cristobal. Both of them had the upside of it, and both of them had drawbacks. Price was a huge issue on both of them. The one in San Cristobal was really set up. It was actually a residential treatment center before for adults. The buildings are falling down, or some of the buildings are falling down. Some of the housing units have been rat infested, and it would need a lot of work to bring it up to where it needed to be. But it does have a ropes course. It does have 138 acres. It does have a trail that leads up to Noble Peak. It does have a riding stable. It does have a riding arena. All those things that, for those activities that we're looking at. Where we were in the process, I don't feel that that's appropriate because it needed so much work.
Commissioner Blankenhorn. Thanks. Yeah, those numbers you gave us were about the same numbers our manager gave us. It costs us 100, 200 up front, and then after that we start getting profit and pay that back, which is a way better option than $1 million a year for the 35 to 40 juveniles that we get in our detention center. So, but just like with what I was trying to say before, residential treatment would help some of the people in the adult center. It wouldn't necessarily help those 2 to 3 that you were talking about for the special segregated deal. But some of our adult population could be served by residential treatment rather than jail.
And to be fair, the residential treatment center that we're talking about would be strictly kids.
No, I know. I keep confusing everybody by going back and forth. But then I was going to segue right back into it right now, which is, so I assume that out of those, let's say 40 juveniles who end up in our detention center every year, some of them could be served by residential treatment instead, but others would end up in another facility somewhere else, another jail.
I believe the hope, and Mr. Romero spoke to this a little bit, Mr. Mata spoke to this a little bit, we'd be able to catch them earlier and intervene earlier to where we're not having to detain them because it wouldn't come to detention versus if we're to catch them.
Those are the programs we have to focus on, but still we know that there's going to be like 35 to 40 that are going to end up in jail because that's the history that we've seen. And it's been going downhill every year because of differences in the way they're dealt with. And so, a residential treatment center is so much less expensive than $1 million a year. And we have to figure out how many of those 40 would actually be helped by the residential treatment. It does look like, some would end up in jail someplace else.
Right, understood. Gentlemen, if I may, can I have Mr. Rodriguez speak about what he's seen in other communities that have closed down their facility?
Sure. I think that we are going to have to make a decision today whether we want to table this or wherever we decide to go. But I think the more conversation we have, the better it's for everybody to make a good, strong decision in the next meetings to come. So please come up, and we'll go ahead and let CAB come up and speak again as well. lunches until 12. That's all I'm looking for. So, go ahead, please.
Chairman, County Commissioners, I'll be brief. I'm the Regional Administrator for Juvenile Justice for Northern New Mexico, and we have seen quite a few detention centers across the state close. And so I just wanted to kind of just briefly mention the ripple effects of that for your community. If your detention center closes, that's going to remove your kids from your community and place them in another community, which would impact them and their families. They would not have access to their children. They'd have to drive down to Santa Fe, and as Mr. Matas stated, a lot of them have transportation issues that they won't be able to go down there and see their kids. It also removes the kids from their attorneys, so the attorneys don't have access to them. Of course, they could call them on the phone, but they can't go and see them personally to talk about the case and to guide them in their legal matters. And then this happens though in other communities, right? So the kids from Rio Arriba are housed in Santa Fe. The kids from Vegas are housed here. So it's not something that's, can't be done, it's done all the time. It just hurts your local community kids in that regard. One of the other things where it will impact you, and I just need you to understand, is that when you take a kid from Taos and you put him in Santa Fe, you're asking that deputy to do basically 8 hours of travel time for a hearing that may last 20 minutes. And you gotta ask yourself, is that trade-off good for your community, removing that officer from the streets where he's here to help and protect your community, just so that he can go down there to pick up the kid, bring him back, has a 20-minute hearing with the judge says you're gonna remain in detention. Now we gotta take him back to Santa Fe, drop him off, bring him back. You're talking about 8 hours of work time where that officer is gonna be transporting kids. And those are the kind of real life implications that you need to be looking at when you close down a detention center. I totally understand budgets and how detention centers and jails really suck resources from communities, but it's kind of like one of those needed things that all communities have to just say, we need this or we need to find an alternative. Santa Fe's there, it's a big facility, it's a well-run facility, it can serve your kids. I have nothing bad to say about the Santa Fe facility, but these are the kinds of things that you're going to have to ask yourselves as commissioners, what are the ripple effects down the road, and what kind of problems is it going to cause for us? You will save some money, but what is that cost going to look like on the back end? That's all I have, unless you have any other questions.
Thank you. Thank you. We all grew up old school, and I guess I get frustrated sometimes, and I think I need to say a little bit of it, but there's adults that don't like to go to the Vegas jail because of the way the situation is over there and the way they run the facilities. That may be one reason why they deter from doing criminal acts again. My daughter had to go to, she was having trouble and I had to send her to Santa Fe. Well then, it's hardship on her, it's hardship on me, and does she really, when she gets back out into the real world, does she really want to go back to Santa Fe if she's a troubled youth? Sometimes I feel that we coddle too many times to our youth and to our adults, and that's why that revolving door is there. I'm not saying that there's ways of supporting this, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people, and I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of other people in this community that say, why do we keep something open that doesn't have any kid from Taos or Cuesta residing here? And we have other kids coming in. So there is a budget issue, but there's also the human factor. So I'm not looking at this as numbers, but I'm looking at this as how we're going to make these kids become better role and have better impact on what they're going to be when they grow up. Whether it's a residential treatment center that we need to look down the road, then let's look at that down the road. But right now, today, we're talking about what our decision is going to be with the juvenile detention center, and if we want to keep it open, or we want to continue to have it run for the next 6 months or a year. At this time, I'm not ready to make a decision. So apparently, it's going to be an operation until we have this decision as a commission as a whole. But there's a lot of things that go on, and parents have a role to play, and it's hard for us to make that role and have you guys be the parent out of in the center and role model and counselor and everything else, because some parents choose to let the system take care of the kids instead of us taking care of the kids. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done all the way around.
If you may, I can respond to, that had been brought up to me before about if I had to drive down Santa Fe to take care of my kids. You're a good parent and I'm a good parent and we had good parents. And I understand where you're coming from based on that premise. The kids, most of the kids we see that have gone to that level don't have a good parent. Their parents are suffering from their own issues. And the kid is kind of tagging along or on the back burner, however you want to put it. It isn't, by sending them down to Santa Fe, it isn't teaching them a lesson, so to speak, so much as it's the lesson they're going to learn from that is, okay, my parents don't care for me, the community doesn't care for me, now I have another community that really, I'm on their back burner too. That's the message we're sending them. It's not so much that we're coddling them or that we're, hug a thug is the term that they always use when I bring up evidence-based practices. It isn't necessarily that. It's you're addressing some of the traumatic issues that these kids have had. And if they had good parents, I would agree with you 100%. If it was my kid, I would agree with you 100%. I'd bring them home and I guarantee you they wouldn't go back down to Santa Fe. But most of these kids see it as a rite of passage or see it as, well, my mom and dad were in jail, my aunts and uncles were in jail. We've got to the point in it as a community where this is what's expected of me. So I don't necessarily see that as the mentality that the kids that we serve are gonna get from it. I don't see it as the parents' mentality either. I get a lot of kids that I ask them where their mom and dad are. Oh, my mom and dad are in prison, or my mom's in prison, my dad's next door. We were picked up the same night together. So those coming from parents that are good, those arguments hold a lot of weight. They really do. But coming from the front line and seeing what we see as a facility and as a mental health provider, as a nonprofit organization that deals with these kids daily, that's not necessarily what we see. The perspective is a little different.
Thank you. I think we have.
I just wanted to say one more thing if I could. I think, even staff at CAB could speak to this, is I think we're catching mental health, substance abuse issues within our community way too late. Although they're not resulting in criminal charges, I think mental health is a frustrating component for law enforcement as well as our facility. I think if we have interventions in place ahead of time, even though we do, some respects, it's that balance of, okay, are we coddling or are we ignoring that we have needs for counseling and support services? And so it's a kind of a twofold process. We could be babying people, but also we could be just, as a community and as a county, neglecting that we have more mental health and substance abuse issues in our community than what's showing up on the census report for our adult facility. Because I encounter, I do direct work and I also do macro work, but I see that by the time I get these kids and we're looking at treatment, it's way too late. We're catching these individuals right on the cusp of turning 18, and when we had other interventions, and detention sometimes does help with that when we catch them at a younger age to be able to redirect them. So just kind of an unaddressed issue regarding our county as a whole mental health wise.
We'll let representatives speak up.
I really appreciate all the discussion, so thank you for spending this time on this topic. A couple of things are coming to mind while we're here. I remember about 15 years ago in this state, there were a lot of RTCs. There were RTCs for teens who were pregnant and parenting. There were RTCs for Native American youth. There were substance abuse related RTCs. It was kind of like, which resource can we send this child to? And then with a change in MCOs and those kinds of things, there was a destabilization that started. So I feel like we end up on this cycle of we have a lot of treatment, that's not working, or we're going to put our money someplace else. And I do think we have deeply committed leaders and programs in our community where somehow, if it is an RTC that uses state funding, we have to figure out a way to fund it within the community or from the county so that we don't end up on this just chasing the funding. So like we should certainly advise ourselves of what's going on with the state model or looking at, we know whatever they're looking at in terms of crisis and triage, but that also changes probably every 2 or 3 years. And we need to be able to figure out what's going on in our community and really stabilize that, I think. You know, and I think that there's less conversation, which I'm hearing is challenging, especially when you hear the emotional component from the community. But the detention center does sort of serve as a backbone as this place that if there is nowhere else for a child to be, it's really critical right now. And so I do appreciate the conversation. This seems to be aligned a little bit, at least like pumping the brake, right? A little bit if we can in terms of hearing what the cabinet secretary has to say. And then also some of us, again, sort of what I was saying earlier in our time together, being very involved and connected about ways we can help. One of the things in terms of resources in the community, when I think about an RTC here, is I was just at our local coordinated community response team the other day. And Tri-County is understaffed, they don't have licensed professionals. Nonviolence Works is not fully staffed with licensed professionals. Butterfly Healing Center is not licensed, you know. So we already have people who are looking to hire people that exactly an RTC would be looking. So if this is looking to hire, so if this is the model, I think we're looking at a huge chunk of time, right? And we also are not, and those places also struggle to maintain that staff. And so while we know that treatment is what's needed at that age, I think in our community, CYFD, all these other places, we also sometimes really struggle to have the trained professionals. And so while we're looking at all of these different options, I think it can be really critical, just the reality piece of that, if that makes sense. I don't know if you were expecting to hear something else from our perspective as an organization, or if that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense because we won't want to try and put a regional treatment center and then have no licensed people there to host it. And then we should just keep the detention center open. What works? That's what the importance of having this conversation is about today, is to make sure we get a little bit of everything, because, you know, sitting here thinking regional treatment center, hey, let's do it, whether it's in Tres Piedras, in San Cristobal, Cerro, Cuesta, down in Peñasco, it doesn't matter. But if we don't have the people to run it, then we need to just stay with what we have and maybe the possibility. So listening to this is what is important for us.
I also think, you know, there's so many programs again with the funding that's been made available through the county, through the Health Indigent Fund. You know, we also have people who are providing services and designing programs that are really of the community, and they're being accessed in a way that's really tailored, I think, to local northern New Mexican needs. You know, I think sometimes when you take a model that's worked someplace else and you bring it here, it can really flop, and that's a lot of time and energy, and it's money, and all of these things. And so I think we also would love time to be able to talk about what we're seeing working. I think there's fantastic things happening in the schools. There's fantastic things happening outside of what we would think of as like a standard medical model. Dream Tree does a lot of that kind of programming, Heart of Taos, Community Against Violence, where it's really meeting people where they're at and not asking them to have to be able to fit inside a model that they've not been able to fit in pretty much their entire life. And we can't keep doing that same thing over and over and over again and then saying, oh, our community isn't accessing the resource. We have to shift the resource to really be meeting what's needed. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
This has been a great conversation. I'm so glad I came. Is it like this every time? So I could, so thank you, Commissioner Rivera, for asking for additional insight or thoughts. For me, the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is the further fracturing of families. It's like you, sorry, I'm trying to chair, it's vice chair, but if you're running a chair, I have a daughter who's 14. She acts like she's 12 most of the time. Sometimes she acts like she's 16. If she were in a residential treatment center or in a, a detention center for juveniles, it would be the same as like when she gets in trouble at school. And she's going to get in trouble twice. She's going to get in trouble at school and she's going to get in trouble when she gets home. I think like we're talking about is like we're not really talking about healthy whole families. We're talking about fractured families. And when you've got a 12-year-old who's in trouble, it's because they maybe that cuddling was not enough for what they got. You know, they didn't get enough of the nurturing and the support and the modeling of alternative behaviors and alternative ways to go. And I never thought I'd be standing here saying, keep a detention center, because I think we, as a nation, over-detentionize our populations. There's no way that when kids are hurting, the first thing we should do is throw them in jail. But we don't have those beginning systems yet here, fully staffed and fully available. And it's so painful to see these young children, and they are children, they're making really childish, bad behavior decisions that they've learned through generations of families. And we need to not further drive the stakes into their connection to a healthy community. And when you've got children who are lost up here and they're being sent to large jail populations of some really serious crimes and criminals, even if they're juveniles, it is further splitting them from caring adults and leaders in our community that they could identify with, and they could be able to say, like, I want to be like that. That's an option for me. And some of you heard me say I come from a really dysfunctional family. And if I hadn't had another path that I could see because I spent some time away from my family, I don't think I'd be able to be a productive, healthy, whole person, which is, as healthy as I like to say I am. So I really encourage you to do what some of the people are saying, just pump the brakes a little. It sounds like you're doing that. And I'm a huge fan of your county manager and of all of you. You worked really hard. He's gathered lots of information, and I have very little experience directly working with the detention center, but I know my staff think the world of them. And this will be the one time that I'm standing up here saying keep a detention center, because we've got to find some other options before we decide to make a final cut on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Bruce McIntosh. I run Meta Theater, and I've been volunteering at the Juvenile Detention Center for the last 3.5 years on a weekly basis, 2 to 3 times a week. And I fired off all you guys an email, which I know you're so busy. Yesterday you may not have even seen it. But first, I want to just reiterate, thank you for having this discussion. My daughter's a police officer in Santa Fe, Taos High, 2011, UNM Albuquerque, and they just started a program which she's become a member of called LEADS. Maybe aware of it. See a kid in a tent on meth with a homeless in a park in Santa Fe. Instead of taking them to juvenile detention, you can say, you ready? If they say, yeah. A human service person drives over, vets them as long as there's no intense violent background, and they go. Housing, education, detox, treatment. So we don't have that here. So my request is that if you, I hope I'm making this respectfully, if you would consider keeping the JDC open for another 6 months. Part of this is based on a conversation I had with a friend, John Gonzalez. He's 70 years old. He's been in Mexico politics for many years. I sat down with him a couple of weeks ago in Albuquerque and talked about this. And I feel, please just cut me off when I hit my 5 minutes, but what he said was, this is, and I respectfully disagree. I think every statute and every state law can be changed, is subject to review and revision. But what he said, I said, if you were in this mix, what would you do? And he just fired up. He said, okay, first thing is the federal government, Department of Justice has grants. So, but these guys haven't had time to chase that. The second thing he said is, Carlos Senares and Bobby Gonzalez, where are they at with this? Who on the committees in the state legislature, there's a committee that will deal with juvenile justice. Who are those guys? Have they been approached? So I think there's a whole array of political focused work that can be done in lobbying to look for both money, perhaps a change in these statutes. You have a new governor coming in 6 or 7 months, and the climate may change. And then the other thing is, I think what these guys requested is a new template. If I'm a government bureaucracy and they said, we're going to house a detention facility and a residential treatment center on the same roof. As a bureaucrat, well, how are we going to do that? Who's going to license it? Who's going to run? And so the answer, of course, is, well, you got to figure that out. I hope that in our lifetime, that in the 9 detention centers in the state, they're all RTCs in addition, because it just makes sense. You can see that's a direction that would be positive both financially and for the small towns to go in. I think that's without question. So my sense is it's going to happen. But it's always going to take some pioneering county or entity or group of people to get the first one done and in place and to work the kinks out. So that's basically what I wanted to say. You know, would you be open to giving these guys a little more time to see if they could pull this off? And then if they can't, I was reading outside the meeting about your task with being very diligent and prudent with the funds available to the county. So of course you have to make these hard decisions based on finances, the best call possible, which is not an easy job. And then finally, we had an event on addiction at a local restaurant with Gina Perez-Barron, MD, who's a leading physician in northern New Mexico working on addiction, and a gentleman named Dino Archuleta from Cuesta, who's a musician, and myself. And we took turns. I read a little bit of the kids' writing. Gina outlined the mechanics of addiction, the stats in northern New Mexico, basically an epidemic. And then Dino would play beautiful, like ranchera ballads. Well, I read something that a kid wrote, and it was his turn to go. And I looked over, and he couldn't play. Tears were streaming down his face. So the impact on the families of young people's addiction and substance abuse problem is heartbreaking. I was seeing the doctor, and I said, I'm not sleeping. And I say, after I go to juvenile detention sometimes, I get out a comp book and I wake up at 2 and I just write down the stories they tell me. I can't sleep. So I think that's an important, what they've created here is a kind of stopgap. It's not a treatment center, but ain't no juvenile detention center. These guys have steel beds, steel toilets. They're locked up many hours a day. Cement, well, it's a prison. It's a juvenile prison. But in that context, what Lieutenant Montoya and his staff have created is also looking out for these guys as best they can. When you get out of here, how can we support you in taking a different path? But it's not a residential treatment center. But the spirit of it is. And so I'm just going to finish with reading 8 lines of this one girl on addiction. Local Hispanic girl. She's 16. She has a 2-year-old son. She's headed to YDC in Albuquerque for a year. Be gone this week. Dragnet was in a hotel room with the Kachina Lodge north of town. There was a room upstairs to the back filled with people's cigarettes and lines on the table. I was offered a line and a cigarette. After I snorted one, my nose burned instantly. Blood started pumping, my eyes watered as I tasted an ugly drip. When I finally arrived home, I immediately jumped in a cold shower, afraid my heart was going to stop from beating so fast. One time was all it took for me to want more and more. It's a roller coaster ride. Catch the downhill thrill, you want to ride again. Enough to endure the long, hard climb back up again. Thank you very much.
There's been some extremely good conversation here, and there are some very valid points being made on both sides of this. I don't want to take anything away from either side of that, but from my perspective, I do want to bring in a couple of things up that haven't been capitalized on a whole lot. The special management unit is desperately needed. We can all appreciate that. Not just for accreditation, but for the safety of the other inmates and the staff and those that interact with them. The population was briefly spoke about for the adult detention center. What I didn't hear is that oftentimes the 14-bed female pod is overcrowded, and sometimes extremely overcrowded. So that is a consideration if a special management unit was to be developed, and there's an average of 3, 4 per day that are in that. The female pod could be utilized and transitioned into that. The JDC could be larger housing for the females. And I know these discussions have happened amongst staff that I've been a part of. The other thing that hasn't really been capitalized on is the concern for the transports. And that does really fall on me directly. Yeah, it's not just driving to Santa Fe and getting them. It's not having to drive them back to Santa Fe. It's the amount of time that we have to house them here. We won't have a housing facility. We'll be forced to use one of the courtrooms in district court holding cell areas. Those are most usually populated by adults. So we're going to have to get outside of the box and utilize a magistrate holding cell or another holding cell, or have an officer simply sit with them in a courtroom in the corner at all times until those hearings come up. It's not uncommon that hearings are set and we arrive, it happened to me just yesterday, and it gets continued at the last minute. Now we're going to have to take that person back and then bring them back again. An alternative to that, and one that I will be exploring a lot, is video hearing. We have the technology, folks. It's just a matter that our courts are going to have to accept that that's going to have to be done in at least arraignments and certain motion hearings. So with all of those things, I just want to elaborate on the need for what's been talked about here today. Keeping a juvenile detention center, it is, in my opinion, the best thing we could do, but we've got to make it work. And that falls to you guys as a governing body to disseminate through everything that you're hearing, everything that you know in the budgetary matters. You guys already know that. And understanding that it further supports why I'm asking for 6 more deputies for the sheriff's office, because we are facing these type of crises, and where we can't do anything but go call to call. This will add more burden to it if we close that detention center. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, Commissioners, I want to wrap up. Since I got to start this, I'm grateful for this conversation. I really am, and I'm grateful for everyone in the room, our partners with our state agencies. And I think there's no argument here. We all understand the issue, and they helped elaborate that very well. I think what's still frustrating to me as your manager, and this isn't the first time I've had to come and ask you guys to make a fiduciary financial decision that, quite honestly, in my opinion, should have been made at the state level. Programs they talked about that were there 7, 8 years ago that have been decimated over time. It's another example of pushing it to the local governments and forcing this Board of County Commissioners that have made really good, prudent financial decisions over time to have to be forced to make another decision that could hurt the community. Even though our responsibility simply is the housing of these detainees. The rest of the issues that were brought up today are kind of outside of our control. We want to support, and we have supported, and we will continue to work on RTC. We know what the problems are in our community, and we as a county want to help address it. But it is very frustrating to me that the resources aren't there for us from the state level, and it continues over and over and over. If we want to make this problem work, you guys have the option of raising taxes. Well, the state hasn't done that in 7 years, but we've had to do it already. Every county in the state has pretty much been forced to make that decision one way or the other, and most of them have had to raise taxes. The state hasn't done it. So when it comes to cutting programs, well, state has a very tough financial situation. We know that even in the good years, it's still not great. It's up and down. Federal government's getting difficult to deal with as well, and they put more and more burden on the local government. Local governments are forced to make the worst decisions for their community without any support from the other governments around us. So that's what's frustrating to me, and I understand why we have to continue to work with our partners. And I understand today if the decision is to push this back a little bit, we'll make do, we'll make things work. But I would like a little direction from the board, at least in terms of how to work with staff that have these questions as to what we're going to do. Can I start talking to them? Can I start working with them to tell them we don't know yet, at least? And if we do make the decision, here's how it will go down, so that I can kind of reassure them that the decision hasn't been made. I mean, these are just a few of the concerns I have as your manager, and I understand how difficult of a decision I'm putting in front of you today. It's not an easy decision, and it will affect everything else. Sheriff's asking for 6 officers, we can afford 2 if we're able to close the juvenile detention center. If we don't, There's no new positions for anybody. There's no raises for anybody. Once again, we're in the position where we were a few years ago, suffering because of moves that were made outside of our control. And so I just wanted that to be said. I understand the direction of the board is the direction I will take, but I just needed you to understand the frustration of your manager as we are forced to make these decisions over and over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cordova. Commissioners, you have a decision?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we postpone this until May 15th and direct our manager to meet with the union and the various staff members and to gather more information on some of the numbers and bring it back on the 15th after he's met with the secretary and what I have just mentioned. And that way we will have a full board here to make a vote. So I move that we postpone this decision until the 15th, direct the manager to speak with union and employees and the secretary.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Well, maybe.
Okay, one discussion.
Yeah, so, this isn't very helpful to you, I don't suppose, but it's helpful to us, I guess, to try and figure something out, but we can't abandon our young people at risk. About $1 million a year of taxpayer money really doesn't make any sense, so we got to come up with something else, and residential treatment seems like the way to go. It wouldn't take care of all 40, right? But it would take care of some of them.
To be quite honest with you, we would probably be able to serve more kids with a residential treatment center than with a detention center. And if that's the avenue the commission would like to go, I think that's a wise choice.
Yeah.
We are still going to have to worry about those 40. But if we're catching them and intervening before they've gotten to the detention point, that they may become a moot point at that.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion, so we have a motion and a second. Clerk call roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes. Thank you for your guys' warning, for getting all these concerns and giving us a fresh look at how we would be able to try to make changes in the near future. I think that we'll have to do that decision here in the next 30 days, I would imagine, or something like that, to get staff to move one way or the other. So again, thank you all for participating in today's presentation, and we'll go ahead and move on with the rest of the agenda. Mr. Cordova, County Manager's report and matters.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. And before I move on, thank you. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but the will of the people and hearing what they had to say was just as important for me to hear. And I appreciate you giving me a little bit of parameters, so I have some room. So thank you. Thank you for the decision today. We'll bring everything back on the 15th with more numbers and handouts and things for you to look at. So moving on to my manager's report. First, I wanted to talk about the hospital board meeting I attended last Wednesday. I also get to attend the finance subcommittee meetings, so that has been useful in terms of understanding the situation of the hospital. They had a pretty strong March in terms of cash, in terms of revenue, in terms of lower expenditures. However, on paper, it does look bad due to a correction of an accounting error that occurred in January. So the accounting error had to do with booking their revenue or their profits from their investments. So when they had to sell off their investments to meet payroll, they did realize a profit. They overbooked that profit and it had to be reversed out in March. So things are getting better. They do have more cash on hand. The cash on hand now covers up to full 2 payrolls, with any excess beyond that going to pay down their AP. So they're lowering the number of days in AP. They're getting to a better place in terms of what their obligations and liabilities are. So I think all in all, the worst of the worst is over, and I'm hopeful for that. I feel like they are listening to some of the concerns of the board as well. One of the things they're trying to implement now is something that had come up in a few of the meetings we had in terms of teleconsultations. Some of the meetings we had with other providers, that was something that came up. It can help in a lot of cases, but if you have specialists in Albuquerque, especially neurologists, things like that those teleconsultations can go a long way in determining whether we need to transport someone all the way to Albuquerque just for observation. If they can truly observe them correctly over a telecommunication method, that can save us transfers. So that's something they're implementing soon. Hopefully that does provide some relief to the transfers. Hopefully it does give them an alternative tool so they can keep moving forward. They've filled a lot of their positions. They're really down on their locums. They were able to hire a couple more positions in different departments, so they're down to basically just a couple locums, one in pediatrics. Because of that, they have higher, obviously, payroll, but their outside cost is lower. Outside locum cost is dropping. So they're meeting where they should be. Overall, having them internal is cheaper for the hospital. So hiring is going to be cheaper. So them filling these positions is a good thing as well.
Do these traveling nurses, doctors, do they stay like a housing farm? Where do they? Do they stay at a hotel? Do they stay? I mean, because are they 3 months? Are they short-term rentals?
Honestly, Commissioner, I don't have an answer to that. I can ask it next week.
It would kind of be one way if this hospital had some contract to get a good rate, whether it's at a hotel or better B&B or something, where these individuals are staying for 3 months, or are they staying 30 days? What are they doing? I don't know if you can answer that, Commissioner, but maybe they can consider looking for something that is affordable that they can have. Kind of, just like flight attendants and air pilots, they get discounted at whatever hotels they go to and spend their nights or whatever they do. But I don't know. Just they want to help make changes. If we're going to add to some input, let's look at everything.
Mr. Chairman, I can ask that at the next board meeting. I don't have an answer for you, but I'll be willing to ask the question.
Thank you.
They're complete with their third round of union negotiations. They said they've come a long way in terms of everything non-financial. So they're pretty much at that last point where it's going to come down to whether they can allocate money to these union members for raises. And then one other thing they just mentioned in response to the problems that the town's been having with their water, they're looking at the potential of a reservoir tank for the hospital, a 72-hour supply of water. So that may be something they might bring to us with no levy money into the future to purchase something like that when they have pricing and they have ideas of what that would cost. But they do have concern in situations like this if they don't have the proper reservoir for water at a hospital. So that was one of the other things they brought up that kind of caught my attention because it makes sense. It's important for them, but it does seem like the kind of thing that we're going to probably be asked to use no levy money for. So.
What will it cost?
They haven't gone that far yet. They just brought it up as an item that they will start researching because of their concerns. So that's a quick recap of the meeting. I still am not a full board member. I therefore do not have access to the board documents and I'm not able to go into executive session. There was a presentation from Quorum Health that I was not able to see because it was moved into the executive session. So that might have been nice to get some more information for the board if I was able to be participating in that Quorum Health presentation. So we're working on that. I hope when the chairman, Stagg, gets back that we will be able to move on providing a full board seat for the county. And then that gets me in the executive session and gives you guys full view of everything that's going on. Moving on, my manager's report next is we had a senior center audit of our funding agency, AAA. They were here last week. Pretty good results for the most part. We all know funding over there has been declining, while need and demand has been increasing. Basically, we only had one finding, and that one finding was in relation to reporting and reassessments, assessments of intake assessments. Not a major finding. It is something that we have brought up in the past, we know we got to work on, and quite honestly, it's probably going to take an extra staff member to really give them the time and the ability to meet those requirements. The county continues to fund more than we ever had in the past, but at this point, we realize with another, I think, 5% funding cut from the state, we are going to request funding from our municipal partners around the county, especially the town. We do need to ask the town if they would be willing to help us. We could use every dime that we get from any of our partners, and we do serve countywide. So that's one initiative we're going to move forward on, is to write letters of request to the municipalities. Obviously, different municipalities have different sizes and different abilities, so we're not going to mandate anything. We do gratefully ask the town, and I ask the commission if you can ask the town, the council, remind them the importance of the services we provide to the seniors within Taos proper, Questa proper. I mean, we do a lot. We have a waiting list at this point. So not only are we getting cut, we're providing more and more services. So I'm grateful for the hard work over at the senior center staff. The finding that we did receive quite likely could be taken care of with 1, maybe 2 additional staff members. And that's what we need over there. We also would like to pay them a little better if possible. I mean, it's only fair to pay them as the other county employees are paid, and that's not quite possible right now. It just isn't. So any help we can get, we're going to ask for, and if we need to, we may ask the commission for a little bit more as well. So all in all, that went well. We do have a requirement to get a response to them by the end of the month, so when we have all that put together, I'll send all that to the board and you can read all of that. Moving on, yesterday we did attend a meeting at the New Mexico Attorney General's office. Thank you, Commissioner Romero, for attending, and thank our County Assessor, Mr. Montoya, for attending, as well as our GIS Supervisor, Anthony Martinez. The county was represented well, although we weren't really needed as much. I think it was great that we were invited to the table. We did more listening, I think, than talking. The members of the land grant, I believe, were the ones that really initiated this meeting, initiated the joint memorial that Representative McQueen is carrying forward. And what I took away from the meeting is essentially the AG is going to do their best to provide an analysis back to the legislature by their November deadline as to what the future steps of the request of the land grant might be. What I did hear, though, from Representative McQueen yesterday, and basically cautioning the heirs of the land grant, is don't expect a major change. Don't expect us to yank everyone's property ownership rights. Eminent domain was something that was thrown out there, and that is a dangerous word, and it's probably something the state can't afford. If the state can't help us keep our detention center open, they're not going to be able to handle eminent domain of such a large area. So it was a good meeting. I think it was beneficial that the county was involved, and I'm grateful that we were invited, and I'm grateful for Commissioner and the Assessor for being there so that we could hear how things are going. But at this point, there's not a request for money, and it just seems like it's a lot more of a research project, compiling history, and really looking at all the legal decisions that have been made over the course of the time that has gotten us to where we are now. So if Commissioner Romero has anything to add, but that was the gist of that meeting. Last week, your management team had a retreat. We hosted a retreat here in the chambers. We had a management team building workshop. It was 2 days, Thursday and Friday, and I felt like it went very well. I felt like it was a successful use of our time. Not all of our managers got to attend, but those that did attend seemed to take a lot away from it. And I'm grateful for Mr. Jaramillo for really working to organize that. And I'm also grateful for all the department heads that pitched in for lunches and all the extras. Mr. Jaramillo pitched in. I want you to know that the cost of the county was at a minimum. We tried to do our best to keep it at a minimal cost of the county while we still work together to build our team. And it was good. It was good for all of our department heads to see each of our roles independently and how we all still work together. And even though Fleet may not have a lot of interaction with dispatch, we're still a team. And we're a county team, and the better we work together, the better our result is for the taxpayer. And I was grateful for the department heads for coming into it with open mind. They fully participated and they paid a lot of attention. So I'm grateful for that. But if you hear any rumors about us passing a hula hoop around outside or doing a ropes thing out there, it's true. We were out there. It was no liability to the county. I hope no extra. So we had a lot of fun as well. It really turned out to be a good event. So I just wanted to let the commission know that that went well, and I was grateful for that. And then last thing, We're addressing a lot of complex concerns now. We did have a safety walkthrough a while back with NMAC. A lot of items were brought up. There's a follow-up today. And so we're going to continue to work on that. But one issue is separation or some settling of the building, especially in the court area. So we're going to likely need to hire a structural engineer to take a look at that. We have about an inch gap.
He's on site.
He's on site today. We're really looking at that. I just wanted to let the board know that that's a concern of ours that we have to address. But we've been at this building long enough now where those issues are front and center. And you can't deny them, we have to address them head on. So it will probably require a little bit of money. We do have some money left over from this complex fund that we will use if needed. One other thing I want to mention about the complex, and this is something all the commissioners have probably heard about, we've heard about it in public forum, is the closing of the door on the east side here by the treasurers and the clerks and the probate judge. We've talked about it with safety, Jason, myself, Gilberto, the complex supervisor. We made the decision to address their safety concerns as well as possible by putting new cameras and reopening that door. So once we get the cameras in place, we will be reopening that door to the public. It's a request that I could not deny. I've had a great opportunity of meeting some of our great treasurers of Taos County. Our elderly tend to come up and take the time to complain to me, and it gives me the opportunity to meet them, and I'm grateful for that. I've gotten to meet some really great treasurers of our community when they come to complain, but I can't ignore their complaints anymore, and I know that all of you have heard them as well. So the concern on safety we'll address with cameras. It's not perfect. There is still the ability for anyone to come in and out. But we've done our best to address issues with the treasurer's office. We'll work with the clerk and we'll work with the probate judge. But all of them as well asked me to reconsider it, to look at what's the best use of that door for the public. So soon that will be reopened.
If that gets reopened, parking is going to be the issue then?
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up. That's the follow-up. We will need to readdress the parking issue out here. It's only getting worse as we have to move all of our fleet out of the Vato Place lot for the beginning of the senior center building. So we moved our fleet over behind the detention center, which was pretty much an empty lot all along, but now it does seem like we have a full parking lot back here all the time. I have a meeting set next week with the magistrate court, Thursday this week, the magistrate court, the judges, DA, to have some of their concerns here. And so I'm trying to listen to them, but I know one of theirs is parking as well. So that may have to change going forward as well. We'll see what that future is like.
While we're on the complex, Mr. Chairman, the handicap switch is still broken at the jail. And that was part of our jail inspection. You could see that. And also, I went to the Rio Fernando Revitalization Cooperative and was told that we missed our opportunity for the $10,000 green infrastructure here, and it was given, the money was given to the town. So could you find out what happened?
Okay.
You don't have to tell me now, just...
We did have some challenges with our engineer and scheduling the time to work on. We had talked about the project that we had already engineered out here, which was another one that we will have to address. It's only getting worse, and we do have a major liability and safety issue out here. We just were not able to coordinate all the players at the same time in time to get it done, and I do apologize. We really were grateful for the opportunity, but we just could not get it organized in time for their deadlines. They wanted to spend that money by June.
Yeah.
We just,
well, I think there will be more money forthcoming, so I hope we can utilize that grant money from Migos Bravos. So yeah, thank you. If you could stay on that one, I would appreciate it for future.
We will. We'll continue to collaborate even on this project, even if money's still not there. We'll include them in the collaboration. That's all I have at this time, Chairman. I may stand for any questions.
Any questions for our manager? Hearing none, we are moving on to item B, or state cleanup. Is that what you're doing?
One more thing before I forget. Once again, a reminder of the opening of the San Cristobal Fire Department building, May 12th.
Scratch that off. I was going to say something.
Sorry, didn't steal your thunder.
Sorry, good.
Commissioner.
Good deal. Appreciate it.
The Earth Day cleanup, yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I just wanted to thank the commission for the support on that. It was a challenging day with the water problems that we had. We chose not to shut down the county that day, but instead to encourage our staff to go participate in the cleanup. And I think we had a pretty good turnout. I don't have the total tons in front of me, but it was a significant amount of trash collected, many volunteers, a lot of community support, and I think all in all, it was a great day even with the weather out there. So I'm thankful to the staff of the county, I'm thankful to our solid waste director and all of his staff, Deborah Chavez, the operations department, Mr. Jaramillo, everybody that participated in organizing it. It was a success. I think it was a great success, especially considering all the other factors that were kind of working against it that particular day. So I just wanted to bring that up and thank the commission for all the support.
All right, we'll move on to commissioners' reports, matters, and announcements. All of them on. Commissioner O'Donnell?
I am
Only 2 items, right?
passing out a flyer of an art opening that's taking place on Cinco de Mayo, and the muralist who helped with the jail mural is opening up a business, nice event on Cinco de Mayo. So I'm just passing those out, and hopefully you can attend.
Okay, thank you. This is very good. Should have asked copies, like 5 copies of each of the prints. Anything else, Commissioner O'Donnell? None? Commissioner Romero? Nothing on my end. I have 2 things, maybe. Mr. Cordova, that I wrote down. Can I get a copy of the community center agreements that you use with the fees and stuff like that? And I thought maybe, I don't know if we were going to try to restructure those. I still remember, but I'm going to get up to speed with that. As my other community centers are going to be open and here pretty soon, and I'd like to be able to have that conversation with those residents up there. The other thing that I'd ask that the commission would consider, I think the May 15th may be a little tight for us to get a report and options for what we are going to do with the JDC. Can we look at that being maybe 1st of June's meeting? I was thinking the same. Getting a good structured presentation without having to go through this long conversation again. I think there's a lot of information, a lot of conversation that happened. I think might give us some time to really not take such a quick decision and make on the 15th. So
I think I already made a motion to make a decision on the 15th. We'd have to bring it back and postpone it again.
We can do it that way, easy.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'd like to just remind the Commission we have to approve our preliminary budget by June 1st, by May 30th. This is a factor to that. We could move forward. We can certainly move forward with a lot of gray area. It will create needs for more public hearing in the interim between the preliminary and the final. We're going to have a lot of work to do in that case if we need to push this back, which we can. And so our preliminary budget will quite likely not look balanced. It will probably be an unbalanced budget right into the preliminary, which we can do. It's going to take a lot of explanation and it gives me a lot of personal heartburn, but it's something we can do if that's the will of the commission. I just wanted to alert you that that's the concern.
I'd rather not push it back.
well, I think if it can stay on the, I would ask then that we would just give direction to Mr. Cordova to try to put all the information he can on the May 15th meeting. If we're prepared to make that decision, we'll make the decision then. And if the will of the commission still wants an extra 15 days, then we can do that as well. But at least, I mean, I'm just saying. Oh, you're talking to yourself. Oh, yeah. For the record, he was talking to himself. For the video, he was talking to himself.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the deadline of the 15th to journal so that we can have direction and make sure that we do get you as many of those answers by the 15th. If the board chooses at that time to kick it back again, we will follow the direction.
And the other thing with the senior center needs, is there a list of things that are guides that can be given as far as some of the commodities, some of the farm to table kind of foods and all the other things that can be donated to help subsidize the amount of food that we have to buy for the seniors, so that it's not all of that side of the cost. Because that, it's just like anything that goes on with the school system. There's a nutrition guy that you have to go to? I don't know if we have to do the same with the senior center. And if there is, what can we do for that? To maybe reach out to some of the local growers so we can get some of that fresh food back into the senior program and eventually down the road with the students.
It's a great idea. The Lord Foundation is working with the schools and TCDC to provide the farm fresh foods to the schools, and that really seems to be taking some good shape. And it will give us an opportunity to utilize some of the resources at TCDC. That freezer's never been turned on. But using it for Ancianos, I'll have to bring it up to Laura and
I think it's a great idea, but there's some restrictions with food guidelines and safety on food issues. I was talking to Mike about that years ago, and so we have to check those. There's certain guidelines.
We kindle those numbers and see what we can do to fight a fire on somebody and give us good, clean directions. We can move forward with that and support that program. Thank you. Hearing no other comments from commission, next item is adjournment. It is exactly 12. Excellent.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. I'll second. Is it, there's a second. Other further discussion? None? Aye. Motion adjourned. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? I need someone to speak up.